It just takes a lot longer unless, this takes 10 minutes. Usually it's an hour.
Getting a Brazilian too.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I know, it came up different.
I know, right?
Looks like you're really zoomed in.
Good evening, everyone. Turn off your cell phones, please. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time, and those who can, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Voorhees.
Present.
Trustee Ruggles.
Here.
Trustee Powell.
Here.
Clerk Noble here. Treasurer Roman.
Here.
And Supervisor Colwell.
Here. I'd like to get a motion for the approval of the agenda, please.
Making a motion to approve the
I
agenda.
have a motion to approve, liquor support.
Support.
I have motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Public comment at this time. You have 3 minutes to come to the podium, state your business and your name for the recorder, and go from there. Seeing no takers, I will close public comment. Moving on to consent agenda, which is a list of revenue expenses, check disbursements, budget amendments, and various department reports. Looking for a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Looking for support?
Consent.
Support. I have support from Mr. Powell. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. Next item up, our report card time. It used to make me nervous as a child, but as an adult, and in this place, it's not such a bad place to be. Pam Hill from Plant Moran, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much for having us here this evening. I'm Pam Hill, partner with Plant Moran. I have here with me tonight, too, Nicole Hart, who was the senior on the engagement, has been working on the engagement for a few years now. We are going to cover the results for the audit in a very shortened version tonight for the 12/31/2022 fiscal year end. We did spend about 450 hours this year auditing the books and records, up a little bit from last year, and you'll notice you had a new report in your financial statements. We did perform an examination on compliance with spending of ARPA dollars in the current year, so that would be something that you haven't typically had. And happy to report that there were no compliance findings, so all the ARPA dollars were spent in compliance with the grant, so that's good news. As you can imagine, that's a lot of hours, right? Not only on our team's part, but your team's part to get ready for us and then to answer all our questions and stuff while we're here. So really just wanted to thank Elaine and Dawn, and then also Kim in Treasury. And then, of course, we deal a lot with Mr. Kowal, Mr. Noble, and Mr. Roman throughout the audit process as well. So we really appreciate the professionalism. Your team is definitely top-notch at the township. I know we say this every year, but again, we did not have any internal control findings, and we did not have any adjustments to the financial statements as a result of the audit. So that's something that we can't say everywhere. So I think you should really feel good about that as a board and what that means as you continue to grow, you continue to make a lot of financial decisions, that you can really rely on the numbers that your team is providing you from throughout the year. So you should feel really good about that. With that, I am going to turn it over to Nicole, and we're going to start just briefly going through some of the highlights of the financial statements from throughout the year.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As she stated, my name's Nicole, and I was the senior on the audit this year. So I'll go over the first few slides. Primarily, they're going to be on the general fund, which, as we know, accounts for most of the activity at the township. So the biggest sources of funding, so yeah, that's the slide there. So the biggest sources of funding are your intergovernmental revenue this year, that state shared revenue, and the federal revenue. That state revenue is made up of, like I said, the state shared revenue, which is the township's portion of sales tax. And so that is up about $352,000 this year, which is due to just increased population. So federal revenue is up a bit this year, and that's due to that ARPA funding that we had talked about. Also, the next highest source, which is reoccurring for you every year, is the property tax revenue. So it's up about 186,000. While millage rates were down a little bit, the taxable values were up, and that's what's driving that increase. So overall, revenues were up about 2.5 million, and even if we exclude the ARPA, it was still up about 250,000. So then if we take a look at the next slide, this is the general fund expenditures and transfers. So if we look at just the expenditures, it was about 5.6 million this year, which is up about 691,000, with the biggest expenses being in general government, as we would expect. And the increase there is due to equipment acquisition and some salary and wage increase. So overall, revenues were up over expenditures about 3 million, and if we exclude ARPA, they were still up about 800,000. So. Next slide here looks at the unassigned fund balance as a percentage of the annual expenditures. So, and as we can see here for the current year, it's at about 30%. And that means if the township could cover their expenses, are we good? Keep going? Okay. So that means that the township could cover their expenses for about 3 to 4 months, even if you weren't collecting any revenue. So next, page 5, the next slide. This slide looks at all the governmental fund expenditures, not just the general fund. And as we can see, public safety has the biggest piece of that bar there. It's up a little bit from last year. These funds are in their own separate funds, and it's up this year due to some equipment additions in the fire and police fund. I'll turn it back over to Pam.
Thank you. So I think just to summarize briefly of some of the points that Nicole touched on, really, once again, the township had a great year. You've been able to really monitor your expenses and keep those in check through tight budgeting processes, and have really positioned yourself well for the continued growth that the township has. And you've been able to set aside money in the capital projects funds and others for some of that growth, which will be important as you move forward. So overall, a strong financial condition, and definitely set for growth. I know Rick's going to ask me, so I'll just say, if I had to give a grade for your audit and like a report card, I would say it's definitely an A+. And we'll get into some of the other items, but the fact that you have a very strong fund balance, you followed your budget very closely, and the audit resulted in no findings, I think is where what I would base that rating on. So great job there.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes, 100%.
You just kind of explained something, and I have a question here. You started this last presentation by saying the township had a great year. From a auditing standpoint, I was curious. I know how I would define a great year, which would be probably different than you. And then you explained that we stayed within our budgets, and you had 3-4 different items there.
Yes.
Is that how you would define a great year from your perspective?
Yes, definitely. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. And then just briefly, slides 6 and 7 cover the water and sewer fund. High-level water fund basically operated a little over break even, so that was good. Your revenues just about covered your costs. And then on slide 7 for the sewer fund, again, this is only the second year that all those funds were combined for sewer. So really starting to finally, just get one more year of trends. I think a couple more years you'll really be able to see the impact of combining all the funds together, and being able to take a closer look at your rates. There was a slight operating loss in sewer this year, but you did have positive cash flows. So kind of continuing to look at both ends of the spectrum there will be important as you move forward. And then lastly, on slide 8, this covers your legacy costs. So you'll see the bar on the left is the pension liability, which again this year was right around 74%. A well-funded plan is typically between 70 and 80%. That's kind of a minimum, so you're right, kind of within that sweet spot. And you have been making more than the required contribution for the last several years. So as you continue to do that, you will see that pay off, and you'll see the continued increase in terms of your funding percentages. So that's been a strategic goal of the township. And then on the orange bar is the retiree healthcare liability. You'll see that was at about 54% funded. And really, that has come a long way. I went back and looked, and 10 years ago, it was 5% funded. So that, I think that's something that the board and management should really feel good about, that strategic decision to continue to make progress towards that, and you can really see that in the numbers here on the graph. So again, something I think you should feel good about related to that. All right, so that's all we had on the graphs. There is an end of audit letter included in your packet, as well as the report related to the ARPA spending that I mentioned. I was not planning on going through those in detail. I know you've had a couple weeks to take a look at those. So if anyone has any questions, though, happy to answer anything related to that.
Any questions at this time from the board members? Mr. Powell?
On your page 8 presentation, I know that this board has been trying to overpay or pay more than the minimums on our liabilities. And it concerns me, even though that we've been doing that, why the liabilities keep going up, even though we're paying more than what the minimums are. If we were only paying minimums or less than that, it would appear that our percentage liability would be increased a lot more than it is now. And so are you, in this graph, does it show that we should maybe be upping our payments to the liabilities more than we do?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, the actuary does quite a bit of the calculations related to that contribution. I think part of the struggle has been that the assumptions that the actuaries were using have changed quite a bit, and that has driven your liability up. So the mortality tables have gone up, people are living longer, that's affected your liability. So it's somewhat something out of your control. The majority of your plans are closed to new hires, except for, I think, 2 of them. And so you're continuing to add new entrants to the plan. So the liability for at least those 2 plans is never going to go away, just because new people are allowed to enter it, right? So it isn't necessarily, it's making sure that you're setting aside enough, but you need to balance between what your priorities are in terms of other things at the township. So that's obviously a management decision. You know, there's a lot of times where you're at 100% and then the market falls, and next year you're at 90, and then the market goes back up and you're at 105 the next year. So some of it is kind of just it's not a game of inches, it's a game of miles, right? So it's really looking long-term at that number versus just, a few years at a time.
So it's not just trying to pay off a credit card.
Exactly. It's a mortgage, basically, is what you're really, and it's a mortgage that doesn't have an end in sight.
A moving
Changes
target
daily.
all the time.
It's always moving, exactly. Yep, great question, though.
Any other questions from the board at this time? Okay, well, seeing none, I want to thank you and your team again for another successful audit. I certainly appreciate your attention to detail
Thank you.
and your resources throughout the year, not just when the audit is here, but
Yes.
explain to the public that Plant Moran is available to us for consultation at any time if we have questions. The world of municipal bookkeeping, as we'll call it, has gotten more and more complicated, and it just amazes me whenever I have a conversation with Elaine, just how complicated it gets. So I would like to thank Elaine and Dawn and Kim and all the others that were involved in it for their assistance, and the treasurer and the clerk, and anyone else who participated, and I certainly thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
Would it be proper to make a motion to receive and file this report?
We could make a motion to receive and file.
I make that motion.
I have motion, looking for support. Support. I have support from trustee Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
so much.
Next item, 8A and B, approval of the minutes of special board meeting of June 20th, 2023, and approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 20th, 2023. Any questions or comments from the board at this time, or corrections? I believe Douglas has done a great job. Seeing none, looking for an approval. Mr. Powell?
I was gonna do the motion, but I'll do the
Andrea?
approval. Want you to do the approval or the motion?
Do the motion.
Same.
Okay.
Motion to approve?
Making a motion to approve the meeting of June 20th, the regular one and the special.
I have a motion to approve both the regular and the special board meetings of June 20th. Looking for support?
Or
I have support from trustee Ruggles. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. Item A, new business, part-time assistant at Dublin Center. Kathy, can you come forward, please?
Good morning, everybody. Oh, it's good afternoon already.
Good evening.
And evening. Time flies when you're busy at the center.
Gone.
As you see in your board packet, today I'm up in front of you to request a part-time position, just to kind of continue to provide the quality of service is my main reason. We're busier and busier, small buildings, we have to move the tables and chairs a lot. It leaves the office uncovered, phone calls go unanswered. In addition to that, with only 2 full-time people there, if I'm at a meeting or off or someone else is off, it's really not the best place to be by yourself when you're working with a senior population. My main concern has always been if an emergency arises when you're alone. It's a team of 2 to use an AED. So between that, keeping the office covered and additional supports to myself, and as you know, I'm still trying to replace the current program developer. So part-time position is we're growing, we're going to continue to grow. Once we're in the new building, we might even need more staff. But right now, to keep things going and to improve, I am requesting a part-time position.
You're anticipating between 15 and 20 hours a week?
Correct.
Okay, and obviously a pay scale that would be commensurate with some of the experience the person may or may not have?
Yes.
Okay. I know that you're in the process right now of kind of getting reorganized because of Julia going off to school.
Correct. We received 3. One declined to interview because she had to go on FMLA with her mother's terminal now. One we interviewed and liked, not a good recommendation. And the other one, somebody that I'm going to interview, but no qualifications, no experience. So I don't want to settle. The seniors deserve that. Our township deserves better. I don't want to just take somebody because that's the only applicant. So another reason this part-time would be beneficial is Julia's leaving August 11th, I believe will be her last day. And grateful that she gave 2 months' notice, but
It'd be nice to get somebody in place before she goes.
yes, there are some things that she has started and some software that she uses that I'm still trying to learn. The whole new Facebook page and social media is new. So, need some additional stuff there.
Okay, very good. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, so I actually
Andrew.
thought Julia was gone, sorry. So I'm glad to hear that she's still there, because that was one of the questions I had was, you start off 2 full-time employees, and then all of a sudden you say she's leaving, so thank you for that. Is this a union position? If it goes part-time, and,
A part-time position is not union.
okay.
Am
So
I
the new
correct
thing.
with that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so the new thing in Wet Lake Township is comparables. How did you come up with that dollar amount for the salary of 20 to 26? Was that compared to other communities, or is that we've had in the past? Because I'm not saying I'm against this, Kathy, but we need comparables now.
No, okay, well, I came up with that with people with any kind of experience working with seniors. I know right now, I think it's $17.50 for seasonal help. I kind of thought that it should be more than that, and then based on experience, and that will be when we do find somebody, that would be a dollar amount that I would have to bring back, I'm assuming just with the supervisor and HR. But I put that,
Because honestly, I want to,
I put that frame
comparable's
there.
a new thing here at White Lake, so I'm not against this position, but, I'm gonna be voting no, Kathy, because I want some comparables.
There was also a wage that was recommended.
Yep, I agree,
by
but
HR.
I want to see comparable.
Kathy, let's say you had experience like Carol coming back, she would warrant such a, that would be right in the ballpark, correct?
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely.
So that could be a possibility, maybe reaching out to her and making it advantageous for her to come back at that rate would be, we would be
Right,
getting
and,
getting the
I mean,
experience and.
it will be open, people can apply, obviously. If she is willing to come back, I would take her in a heartbeat, but, she's not
I mean, I
gonna
just
come
thought
back
of-
for 15 less than she
No,
made, so.
correct.
Especially if she's stepping in addition to doing some of Julia's responsibilities.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So
Any other questions?
I just
Trustee
have some
Smith?
clarity, thank you. So you have, in your memo, you have 2 full-time employees, which is you and Julia currently.
Correct.
So then you're advertising for a new full-time to replace Julia.
Yes, we're in the process of that right now.
And then this is in addition to, just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes.
So 3 employees total, including yourself.
That's correct. It'll be 2 full-time people and 1 part-time.
1/2, okay. So, and then to go off of trustee Voorhees' comment, I don't know if comparables are the new thing in White Lake Township. But I did have a question a little bit more about how you came to this wage scale.
Like I said, I just kind of went, brief meeting with Kathy, all this has happened so fast.
With Gabby DeRocher?
Yes, with HR. And I know the seasonal people out there doing lawn maintenance, and most part-time employees in the township are like $17.50 to $18.50. So I just thought, okay, well, they're working with seniors, they have a lot more responsibility. So I said I would think that a minimum of 20, but depending on experience and what they bring to the table, it should be able to be higher. So it's not like we're agreeing to pay somebody $26 an hour right now. That would be discussed with the after we get applicants in. But it would be the minimum starting at 20. So if I brought someone experienced in and they only stayed for a couple of years, and then somebody else in a couple of years came and they didn't have as much, that's why there's that range.
So normally with other employees, we kind of come up with a stepping stone range. So maybe we can have some discussion about that tonight. You're paying them as much as a trustee makes an hour.
I'd just like to clarify something in the collective bargaining agreements. Absolutely, since I've been around and years prior, when you're dealing with union jobs, this obviously isn't one. We do use comparables, and we would use comparables in the past positions that we've had over the years, correct, Supervisor Colwell?
Correct.
So if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to compare ourselves with other like communities that surround the area. As far as benefits, we'd have nothing to go off of, and that's part of the collective bargaining, when they're negotiating with MAP and POM and PLC and the IFF, International Firefighters Association.
And this might be an appropriate wage, and I totally agree with you that you want someone responsible and you want to have somebody that's trustworthy and competent and has, talents and skills and all those things. So I'm with you on that. But we don't normally have a position come to us and tell us the wage. We normally decide the wage.
That's something I worked on with HR, because I didn't really know where to set it.
Yeah.
And like I said, this is something that we've discussed with the advisory council in the past, but we've never brought it, we've had it as discussion, so we never brought it to the board. I just knew that I at least need to get somebody in there as soon as possible, because I don't have much time left to replace the current staff. I really don't know about what comparables, to be honest, would be with other senior center staffing. So I'm just being honest there.
I did receive a phone call from Green Oak Township about a month ago from their clerk out in Green Oak, and they were comparing what we had set for that position, and they were going around and getting comparables, because we're pretty close to their community size.
No, Green Oaks is smaller.
They're not far behind us as far as the pay. They were,
Oh, far as the
they were
pay?
gonna up their pay based on what we provided them, and then they had a couple other communities in my conversation with the clerk there. It's about a month or so ago.
Mr. Supervisor?
Yes.
To just be blunt, I would lose my secretarial staff probably because they don't make as much as this part-time position. In the private sector, this is quite high. And so Kroger is advertising $5.50. McDonald's is advertising
About
$15.50. $15.50
Yeah.
and 16 at McDonald's.
Yeah, about 16,
And
17.
so I'm not sure how hard of a job it is to work with incredibly fantastic seniors in this township. I am not willing to give this support if we leave that number in there. I'm kind of in agreement with Andrea in that I believe some work needs to be done on comparables. But if we remove that hourly number in there or drop it to 15 to 25 or 15 to 26, so that range is bigger, I could support it. But I'm not
How
gonna,
about 16 to 25?
quite frankly, I'm good with that.
Okay.
This doesn't give this board enough option to analyze their qualifications and really what the scope of work is going to be.
I think 16 to 25 would be adequate myself, and I think you're.
And I'm good with
you're
that.
in concurrence with that, so I'm proposing that we amend that to go a range of 16 to 25 an
I'm in
hour.
agreement.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board at the moment?
I would say 18 to 25 for my recommendation. I mean,
It's just a matter of getting comps,
Taco
and
Bell
I
pays
think we
more.
need comps.
I agree.
And it's not that tough.
Well,
Every community
yeah,
has seniors that they work with,
Yeah,
and so it should be
Kathy
easy.
made some inquiries to a variety of different places. I
Okay.
don't know all of the details. and
Just
it
has
was
to be provided
Her
to us.
recommendation that this would be the wage range. So if we go from 16 to 25, we're about 90% there. We're covered.
Totally agree.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Roman.
well, first, Kathy, I want to thank you for the great work that you do with our seniors. I've
Amen.
worked with seniors, I've worked with kids, and it is not easy. So
you.
thank you. And
Because I'm a senior and I know, yeah, exactly.
I grew into
totally-
the field, so I can qualify to go now.
totally support your request.
Yeah.
Comparable wages are nothing new to this township. We've been doing them. We should be continuing to do them.
Yep.
We should always do them.
Yep.
And I'm fine with the 16 or the 18 to 25 if you're good with it, Kathy.
I am.
I think I'd go 16 to
16,
25.
yes.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable with that as well, but will that come back to the board, or who will make that final
Well, that decision will be made in the hiring process based on the qualifications of the individual.
With
and-
HR,
Beg your pardon?
with HR?
With HR, and
Okay.
they would make that ultimate decision. This board does not necessarily determine each individual's wage when they are hired. They may have a job classification and different levels as such, but not each individual necessarily. If someone comes in here, say, for example,
No, I
she
get it,
gets
I'm
a
just,
whiz on the Facebook, you know what I'm saying? Somebody that just is off the charts with it.
I'm
That's going
fine
to be
with that,
worth
I'm just
something.
asking for clarity, just so we're all
That'll
on the same,
decision be made by
all on the same page here.
Kathy's recommendation in HR. Okay?
I want to make sure that we're on record knowing that whatever wage is set here, it becomes then a future comparable to every other hire in the township. So I want it to be extremely.
Well, it's every other hire in.
Need it vetted carefully.
In
Part-time.
part-time categories. Correct, right. So,
Without benefits.
okay,
Right.
and so I'm entertaining a motion. Andrea?
Nope.
Okay,
Motion to approve the part-time position at the Community Senior Center with the wage range between $16 and $25 per hour.
I have a motion. I'm looking for support. I have motion support from, Mr. Noble. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Moving on, thank you. Item B, resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kathy.
Kathy. Resolution to set the public hearing for the special assessment, reassessment of Sunset Taylor Road Maintenance Special Assessment District. Say that twice fast.
Good evening, thank you.
Mr. Hebert.
This is a reassessment of an existing special assessment for road maintenance where the property owners felt that they weren't collecting enough money to pay the road fees and plowing and salt and really what the residents were saying, the inflation, they didn't plan for that in their 2020 special assessments. So Lisa helped with the resolution to do a reassessment of the assessment, increasing the dollar amount from, it's going from $233 per parcel to $364 per parcel, and this is at the resident's request. So what you're doing tonight is setting the public hearing for August 15th.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Mr. Supervisor, if I could ask?
Yes.
When you say residence request, a normal special assessment district requires a petition of request. Did this come through the board?
It came through the petition process. They had 60% of the residents in there sign the petition, which exceeds the threshold required.
All right, and then the special hearing is proposed. Is this the first of the 3 special hearings that we have to have, or how are we doing?
In working with Lisa on this one, because it's an existing special assessment, we need this resolution to set the public hearing. We need 1 public hearing to modify that assessment.
So it's a special assessment role confirmation, not
Correct.
assessment, and not the SAD role, and not the SAD.
It's not establishing it.
Correct.
It is confirming the
role
new amount.
confirmation.
Right.
Okay.
If I
Thank you.
can just tack on to that.
Yes.
We generally have, for the benefit of the board, we generally have 3 resolutions: the intention, the establishment, and the role confirmation.
Right.
Because it's already established, the only thing you have to do is the role confirmation. But before you do that, if it's more than 10% increase, then you have to have the public hearing. So the way we decided to bring it to you was through this resolution, which explains all of that for the benefit of the public, and then actually formally sets the public hearing date for the confirmation of the role. And so you'll have the public hearing, and when after the public hearing, you will have another resolution to adopt the
Assessment.
reassessed
special assessment.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you.
Like I said, say that fast 5 times. Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board or Mr. Hebert?
We need a motion to approve resolution.
We need a resolution to set the public hearing, correct? Which would be next month?
Which would
I think
be
it's in the
approving the
resolution.
resolution.
It is.
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Ruggles is correct.
Mr. Ruggles is correct.
The date is in the
Approve this
resolution,
resolution.
right?
August
This
18th
is
is-
August 18th, though. Did
August
you
18th.
misspeak? Is it the 15th or the 18th?
It is on the, it's on the 15th, and what the first, page 1 of the resolution is referring to the old one that you were
I apologize.
reassessing.
You're
I
right.
saw the same thing when we did it, and
Sorry about that.
nope, you're fine.
The actual date is,
Same thing.
Paragraph 5 has
Paragraph
the
5
date.
Yep.
is, yep,
Paragraph 5, page 2.
It's
Easy to
tricky
get
there
hung up
with
on.
your first sentence.
Hung up on that one.
You gonna make a motion, Mr. Ruggles?
Sure, yeah, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 23-017 to set the public hearing on the special assessment reassessment of Sunset Taylor Road Maintenance SAD.
for August 15th.
Is for August 15th, 2023.
Support.
We have motion, support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, thank you. Item C, Resolution 23018, tentative declaring its intention to establish special assessment district to be known as Lake Neva West Canal Weeds Control and Lake Improvement.
this is a new special assessment where we'll do 3 resolutions. We'll do the intention, the establishment, and the confirmation. This is the first resolution of the intention to set the public hearing for the establishment of the resolution. This is a lake improvement assessment that this group of property owners have done in the past. They let their old one expire. The canals got weedy. They decided they wanted to revisit that. They received 62% of the residents approving the special assessment, And we'll go forward with your approval at the public hearing again on August 15th, 2022.
Okay, any questions on that?
2023.
To the board.
2023, I'm sorry.
Supervisor, I move approval of the resolution 23018 to set the, actually, this is for the intent to establish a special assessment district. That'll be motioned on August 15th, 2023.
Support.
I have a motion, I have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, moving along. Resolution 2301910, declaring its intent to establish a special assessment district to be known as the emergency sewer connection. For the benefit of the public, this is a part of a program that we have here within the township that this board set up to encourage folks and to assist some folks who may have emergency situations to get hooked up to a sewer system, which is obviously one of our goals that we're trying to do. And we, from time to time, put multiple properties together in a district, as in this particular case, as was done.
Thank you. This is you do this twice a year. It's a 3-resolution process again. This is the first resolution. There's 7 parcels that Aaron and his team have worked with and have connected to the sewer system. And with your approval of this resolution, we'll move forward with the 2 public hearings required.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick thing. Is there a reason why we don't have this for a water and sewer connection and allow for water to use this same?
The board has
emergency?
not visited that yet, and if you were to put it in an equation, math, I know you understand math very well, the percentage is minuscule of well failure in an area where water is available. As a matter of fact, the county requires that if the well goes bad, that there's city water available, that they won't get a permit to put a new well in. But I don't recall that many people in the last couple of years.
Well, I
Just worked on
can think of one.
Settlers Point.
Right.
This month.
Okay.
The gentleman is struggling
Okay.
to get that moving along. Main's on the other side of the road. And he's
To
got
Mr. Powell's point, I remember one recently, the apartments right here next to Coles. That was huge,
That's a
right?
little bit of a difference. It's a private enterprise. It's not an individual, okay?
What was the individual that owns it?
There's a big difference between taking care of Mr. Ruggles and his family and a for-profit business.
If I recall
okay?
correctly, the policy specifically talks about residential structures, single,
Yes.
We are also working with North Shore Apartments. They actually are going to be scheduling a pre-construction
So that's moving
this
forward.
week or next week. So that is moving forward.
So, but,
To extend mains into their
right.
neighborhood.
That is something this board could look at for a future.
Since it's so minuscule, it would obviously not have a major impact on the budget and in the SAD. And does it make sense? Can we make that change right now tonight and make it a water and sewer connection instead of
I
just
think there
sewer?
should be some discussion on it and some research
Can I
done.
respond?
Yes, Counselor.
Just so that everybody remembers this process, the township adopted a policy on how we're handling them. Every one of these individuals signed an agreement, which was that bridge until the SAD is created and they got that dollar amount. So
Right.
they know what they're committed to pay when this SAD is finalized. So I don't know if that will have any bearing on the cost imposed against the property.
I just know a new well is problematic for certain people, and even connecting into our water supply is problematic occasionally, and they deserve some assistance as well.
New well's 10
So,
grand.
Yeah,
That, I think I'm being like,
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So I was just pointing out that we,
I believe that something should be discussed at one of our
okay,
meetings. Good
All right.
point.
It's a great
I'd like to
idea.
have some discussion on it, at one of the
Great.
sewer meetings
That
/
works.
utility meeting. Okay? All right?
I have a
Yes.
question. And I don't remember, and I don't know if I skipped over, what's the interest rate that we extend to these individuals in this program?
Typically charge 5%.
I think it's like 5
Aaron, do you recall what the agreement
sure.
provides as far as interest goes?
interest rate.
I believe as far as
It's a 5% admin fee.
it's a 5% admin fee on the grinder station costs.
Right.
I do not recall what the
I
what
think
the
it's in the
agreement was.
agreement.
It is in the agreement.
Okay, it's been a while, I couldn't remember.
Something in my head sticks of like 5%, but,
It's probably a deal now, considering what rates have done.
yeah.
Good
So
for
the
our
agreement
residents.
spells out all of the interests, exactly how the SAD will work. And then attached to the agreement as the exhibit would be their itemized cost estimate from our engineer, as well as the actual accounting of the project from Elaine.
If I could, why don't I
Yes.
bring that back in August? Why don't I bring that back in August, what the,
At the public hearing.
yeah, at the public
Right.
hearing?
Okay. So at this point, you still want to establish this? You still want to move forward with this
Oh, yeah,
establishment?
yeah, if you
This is
would,
the,
please.
this is the intention
The intention.
resolution,
Yep,
which sets the
setting-
public
it sets
hearing
the- yep.
for the establishment of the
Correct,
district.
correct.
Right.
This is the first step of 3.
Yep.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion? Mr. Powell?
Mr. Supervisor, I move to approve Resolution 23019 that creates the intention of establishing a special assessment district, and the public hearing be held on August 15th, 2023. Yeah.
Support.
I have motion, I have support, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, thank you. Item E, discussion regarding Gale Island surplus properties with a potential motion to revise configuration of the parcels and to list the properties for sale. As this board knows, and for the benefit of the public, we have acquired multiple lots through tax sale after there was a foreclosure, and we did some demolition on the site to improve and remove and mitigate a very serious hazard. Mr. Powell and myself sat down with our pens and kind of reconfigured out of 8 lots that were kind of haberdashery put together, I would say, and compiled 5 marketable lots, of which I have had some conversation with a few persons in the private sector, and they felt that the configurations that we have are quite nice. There was one last-minute detail that Mr. Powell and I both simultaneously caught, which was the placement of a lot line of the 2 parcels, which would be parcel, excuse me,
The purple one and the orange one?
purple, orange, green, yellow, yes, the purple one, and, yeah, the purple lot and the orange lot, yes, exactly, very good, very descriptive. Lot A and Lot C, and that was to have the property line relocated so that the 12-foot wide sanitary sewer easement was on the property line, which would prevent potentially long-term someone from encroaching on it with a structure and/or shed or something of the sort. And seeing as that this is a semi-isolated location, and the township's visit to it may not be as frequent as one would want, I would really be unhappy if I got a call one day that somebody put a post hole digger in the ground to put a post in for a shed foundation or something of the sort, and they hit a high-pressure sewer line. It wouldn't be good. So Mr. Powell and myself looked at this, and from a practical and engineering standpoint, made the best sense, and Mr. Lufkin, our township engineer, concurred. And so therefore, we brought this recommendation for this reconfiguration to this board with Mr. Heber's assistance. Thank you very much, David. Very helpful. And want to push these forward in this configuration and put a marketing plan together that will consist of putting these out for bid, sealed bid with a reserve in a future date, as soon as everything is, all the paperwork's done. Mr.
was
Powell,
that?
you have anything you want to add?
A sealed
Whoop,
bid?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, what did you say? Is we're going to do what, a sealed bid
Just do a sealed bid with a minimum reserve.
on each lot?
Correct. Okay. Any questions or comments, Mr.?
No, I just had a question in regard, like if someone lives there now, that was my
On
only
the
question.
open sites,
Oh,
she wanted to know what's
Yeah.
on the non-colored sites, who
Is it
lives there.
summer living,
there's some homes there, yes.
full-time or summer living?
I don't know.
Oh, you're
They're
good. Okay, just curious.
absolute habitation arrangements, so.
How would we establish the minimum?
There has been some research that I'm doing to establish that. Okay. Yeah. the whole idea is for the township to get, if not all its money back, as much of it as we can.
Right, so do you just take the total that we spent and divide it equally?
Not according to the persons that I've had conversations with. There's some of the lots there that they feel have a premium, and some of them, yeah. And as soon as I have a potential guesstimate, I will notify the board, and we can have further discussion if necessary. But I think that the reserve will be, moderate. There is and has been interest by multiple people on these parcels. So I do not believe we'll have difficulty selling them all.
Supervisor, how
Yes,
are
sir.
we advertising these?
We have a variety of different ways. We can actually put them on our Facebook. We can post a sign on the island, which will attract a lot of attention.
We don't have a real estate contract?
I
on
don't
any
believe
of
we
these?
need a real estate contract for this particular project.
Okay.
Okay, I think this one will kind of work its own way. And if it doesn't, then we can come back and the board can reconsider it. So, but I think from a marketing standpoint, it's interesting. There seems to be a lot of interest in Gale Island.
Now that the state law has changed and we can actually make a profit on some things, that's going to be very helpful.
Well, that would be nice. I don't know how much the crystal ball will prevail, but we will have that information, and that information will be conveyed to this board so that everyone knows exactly where everything stands before it goes out into
In the
general.
market, there's a very large shortage of buildable lots.
Correct.
So,
And there's not a whole hell of a lot of island lots
like.
with sewer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
If not, if there's no further questions, I'd like to receive a motion. Mr. Ruggles?
Oh, geez, what kind of a motion would that be?
Approve the proposed reconfiguration.
Okay, that's the only motion you want? Nothing to do with selling of the lots?
Yeah, you
Well,
need
here,
to do that,
here you
too.
go.
There's your motion.
I beg your
Two
pardon.
parts to it.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Ruggles.
Two parts, if I can read it. Okay. Like to make a motion to proceed with the lot configuration and easements as recommended by the township engineer and assessor. Do I need to mention something about changing that property line on those
No,
two?
that's already been taken into consideration.
And to approve and proceed with marketing and taking CO bids with reserves that will later be determined to move forward with selling the properties, the parcels.
Or,
I have motion,
Do-
I have
excuse
support.
me, 1 second, do we need
Yeah.
to put anything in here about, if necessary, we'll come back to the board first?
It doesn't have to. I mean, we can notify the board of what the market evaluation is of the parcels, what we think the minimum would be. We can notify the board and then put it out there. It really won't be a question of, I could sit there and say, Lot A is worth, I think it's worth $100,000. I think it's worth $100,000. In reality, we'll come back and say, yeah, it's only worth about 70.
I just something that the board is aware of what the minimum is before it
Oh,
proceeds.
they will know what the, oh, absolutely. The board will know all that. Yeah.
So do we need to have that part of the motion, or,
The board will just be informed of the activity in relationship to the sale.
okay.
You can
Okay.
put that in the motion.
And
The board will be advised of the activity of the sale. That'll be,
you're kidding, right?
that'll be an add-on to his
I
motion.
can repeat it if you'd like. Oh, okay.
Okay, we have motion, we have support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, David, again.
And just so the board knows that we'll start this right away, working with Mike and getting, the final legal descriptions all done. And then it goes to the county for processing. So it'll be a few weeks before the parcels have changed to the new configuration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next item, Resolution 23020, tentative award for construction contract for wastewater system improvements. We're talking sewer here. There has been, this has been brought before the board some time ago when we were after some, what I'll call favorable monies. And we put Mr., my brain, I'm sorry. I have one of those days. Mr. Potter, thank you. Mr. Potter had put together, and the engineering had put together an extensive list of repairs on variety of main locations within the township, and put it out. This was brought before this board, it was discussed, and then was put out for bid, and then multiple bids came back, a bit higher than we anticipated, a little bit higher. So the decision and recommendation from Mr. Powell and engineering has been that we still pursue these funds because there's a $285,000 principal forgiveness. And also do what we can and start with what I call the dark areas first and move forward. So if you, anything you care to add to that, Mr. Powell?
Yeah, correct. This,
Mr. Potter?
this project
That'd be fine.
doesn't include many projects from the first 5 years of our asset management plan. Also correct, we did go out to bids. Bids did come back considerably higher due to, we presume, inflation, but that's debatable. The, correct, again, the project, as we've talked about at, I think, we've had this 4 or 5 times now in front of this board for different parts of this process as the ARPA funds are being funneled through the state revolving funds. And with that comes some loopholes that we need to move through. So this will be the first of, I believe, 3 items on the agenda tonight related to this project. We are kind of in the final stage after this. We only have the loan closing will be the final milestone and the order of approval. That will all happen in August. So the bids, with the high bids, we had basically 3 choices. Our choices were to reduce the scope of the project, stick within the budget that we had previously put together. We could have paid for the excess construction cost out of cash reserves, or the third option was to go back to the state, try to find out if they had excess funds available. In my discussions with the state revolving fund projects for this year are almost all over budget by a large margin. And so we had about 2 to 3 days to make that decision. So we elected to stick within the project plan budget. So we worked with the apparent low bidder. They did agree to hold their unit prices and allow us to reduce the scope of the project to the original project budget. I do have one item that I wanted to point out on my memo. So the state revolving fund adds 6% contingency automatically to these projects. I did not add that to the line item from our budget. So there's actually, in the motion tonight, we are going to recommend tentatively approving Resolution 23020 to award the tentative award of the construction contract for the CW SRF 5800-01. I'd like to amend the amount to $2,478,041, which includes the 6% contingency that would be added.
What was the amount again?
But I would not put that on the resolution. I would
Okay.
just have that on record, that that's the amount the board is awarding, because we don't know if we're gonna need that for the contractor or not.
Got it, but it's 2,000,004.
That's a good point. We prefer not to advertise that to the contractor. Also, we don't always know if we're going to need the contingency. So it would be a not-to-exceed amount, $2,478,041.
But you don't want that amount in the motion,
Resolution.
in the
The
resolution.
resolution's already got the amount in it, and I would stick with that amount that's on the resolution.
The resolution is for
use-
the state.
Should you use that amount and then just say 6% in addition to contingency, or not?
We could use that. What do you think about that?
Because the resolution is an award of a contract, we don't want that number in the award of contract, but it has to be at least identified for the state that we're recognizing that 6%. So want to make sure that we're not guaranteeing that 6% to the contractor in the award here. So I'm not sure how to make that happen.
This is just the
That'd be
award of
something that I
contract,
could work
correct?
out with Lisa between today and tomorrow. if the board agrees that the amount is okay, subject to an attorney review.
Yeah,
I think that would be an appropriate motion.
yeah.
And the tentative award of construction is contingent on the other items on the agenda tonight.
Okay, question.
Mr. Roman?
Yeah, I don't understand. All this is doing is awarding a contract that was already bid, correct?
Correct.
A modified contract, yeah.
Subject to the township receiving financing through the SRF program.
Okay, so that's next, but as far as this resolution goes, we do want to stick with the number that's in there, correct?
Yeah.
Because it's already been bid.
Sorry, well, it's been bid at a higher amount. We've negotiated down to that number with some adjustment in quantities. We'll work with the contractor, possibly some other amendments, but the idea is we're trying to stick within that original budget that was established as part of the
Okay,
project plan.
and this contractor's agreed to this amount that's in the resolution?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
He's agreed to work down the quantities to stay
Correct.
within that budget.
Correct. Yep.
To meet that number. Right. Okay. Counselor?
So this resolution is for the benefit of the state. They need this.
Correct.
This is a form that they want us to use.
Correct.
I'm not quite sure I understand how the 6% plays into this.
So it's an award to a contractor. 6% is a contingency that we don't know if we're gonna need or not. The state will automatically put 6% on the overall project budget as a contingency, but I don't want to award the contractor
With that additional
with that additional
6%.
6%.
So the number in here is correct.
Yeah, my concern is if the board approves a not-to-exceed amount that was our budget line item, and then we do need to use part of the contingency that the state will automatically add to the project, then do we need to come back to the township board again? What I'm trying to do is avoid having that log jam in the process, because we're gonna have traffic control, lane closures. I mean, this is gonna be a lot of bypass pumping. It's gonna be a fairly technical project through a main corridor of the township.
You know, if we work it right, we can close the other roads that the road commission has not closed
Well,
yet.
I think if we get teamed up, we can close every road coming and going.
Terrible.
This is just a budget, right?
No, this has been
This
bid
is a
on.
contract for the
This
contractor.
is a
I
bid
know, but
on,
it's-
and they've agreed
To stay within the
cut down the scope.
original project budget of,
Right.
and award the contract to the low bidder at a value of.
Could this
Right.
potentially be a second motion to acknowledge the 6% contingency? Maybe the first motion could be to approve the resolution as is. The second motion could be.
I wouldn't want to
board.
I wouldn't want to mess with what the state, I wouldn't want to mess with this at all.
I think there's just a heightened awareness of the board right now. And I think that,
Well, if we have to
We ask
come back,
Eric
it's
if
not
he
going to
has
be the
it,
end of the
yeah.
world. I mean,
but I believe there's a heightened awareness
be a
of the
year from
board
now. We
of
won't know
this.
if we're gonna
And
need it
if
or
it
not.
is something that needs to be brought back, I don't think you're going to get any. We're aware of it.
I do have a question that may be germane to this, and I'm wondering, is the forgiveness amount, the potential forgiveness amount, is that a percentage of the approved contract, or is it a dollar amount?
it was a percentage, 10% of the total project cost.
Okay, with a maximum, because if we include the 6%, does that increase the potential of
It was identified
additional?
as 10% of the total project cost of $2,850,000, parentheses, $285,000.
Okay,
And actually, I think that you've seen that actually in the past, in one of the past resolutions that you had for this project. But
so since our costs have gone up, will the state stand by, will the SRF fund stand by the 10%, or are they capped our 10%?
No, they have no additional funding for the
Okay.
calendar
They
year
capped
projects.
what
So
they've
they're
approved.
tapped out. We
Mr.
would have
Rom.
had to have made that decision 2
Eric,
weeks ago.
I don't know, did you drop this resolution as well?
No, sir.
Oh, you didn't do this one. Darn it.
I didn't either.
That's standard state language that we had to add the value into.
In other words, a document that is very one-sided.
They have some strict rules. I'm sure you've probably worked on revolving fund
Very
projects, but
difficult.
it is,
There's
it's
no
a lot
negotiating.
of hurdles to
Yeah.
jump through. You're on an aggressive timeline. Matter of fact, the timeline includes, these resolutions are due to the state tomorrow to meet our milestone. Tomorrow is the milestone.
Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to propose we have a motion for $2,337,774.63, correct?
Correct.
Just passing the resolution.
Pardon?
It's just passing the
approve the
resolution.
Yeah,
Pass
that's
the
what I'm
resolution
doing.
As submitted.
So I want to make a motion to pass this resolution for this resolution 23-020, tentative award for construction contract for wastewater systems improvements for $2,337,774.63. And that is in the form of a motion. Looking for support.
Support.
I have support from Mr. Roman.
Under discussion, if I could, please. And you may, because this, I don't think I can ask this question in another item. The balance of the work to be done, because I'm in total agreement, we need to do something. Number one, this is the least expensive, used to be the least expensive way, and now it's going to be the least expensive way we have available right now. The balance of the project, can we bid that out at a little bit better timing? Because right now is the contractor's most busy time of the year between now and November. And can we bid this out to maybe the balance of the work to be done over the winter?
This project is actually for 2024 funding, so this will be next year's projects. So this basically is planning now for next year construction. We won't receive I don't think we received the final
We can't,
notice to proceed until somewhere around October, something like that.
September 1st is about when we can provide a notice to proceed. So we weren't really anticipating construction this season, because for this project, we don't want winter construction. We don't want lane closures in the winter. We don't want bypass pumping in the winter. So I guess theoretically, they could work October and early December if it's amenable, but we were anticipating construction next year.
The sanitary flows are a little bit more controllable in the winter, and working underground, there's no reason to have to wait till summer, and so I didn't know what your schedule was.
You've got the lining topside, subject to the weather.
Okay,
So
you're
that's,
gonna pull the liner
that's a
through it.
consideration. Bypass
Has to be
pumping
tiered.
gets harder because it's subject to freezing, because now that's above ground.
Okay, I'm following you.
The list goes on.
You never know, though. We had such a mild winter you could work all winter
Yeah,
last year. So I mean,
Our contractors
know.
work all year, but they wanna make sure that there's no hiccups, and so I follow that.
So
Saying it's
a couple years
6%
ago, we relined 300 feet of pipe south of Circus, which is the manhole number one in White Lake Township. And, a portion of that project was completed during the winter. So it is possible.
yeah.
Okay, just curious.
Another thing to keep in mind is that the pipe segments that we identified in the scope of this project, not all of them had a NASCO rating or a pipe rating that would be, immediately in need. They were identified in our first 5 to 6 years of our asset management plan as things that we wanted to do. So when the budget, or when the bids came back extremely high, we looked at how could we get this back down. We kept the pipe segments from the fallout at Circus, from the end of that extension that we had previously aligned, all the way down. The things that we cut loose were some of the most expensive pipe segments that were the Cooley Lake Road right away, the last 2 segments on Round Lake Road. Those were all 30-inch diameter pipe, your large diameter pipe, some of the deepest pipe that we have. So there's a lot of expense there, and those were the farthest away from the fallout point. So they were, in some of the better shape of all the main that we looked at
Okay.
with the SAW grant. So most of these projects were identified through inspections that were done on the SAW grant back in 2016.
Okay, we have a motion and support.
Yep.
All in favor? Aye. Aye, ayes have it, thank you. Okay. Resolution 23021 to authorize issuance of sanitary sewer system revenue bonds and pledge of unlimited full tax full faith and credit.
Ouch.
Mr. Roman.
Well, this is the resolution to authorize the issuance of these revenue bonds. I don't believe we've ever done revenue bonds before. But I know that we had some amendments made. I think section 15 of the resolution. And Eric, I'm going to let Eric talk. Eric, come on up.
Wise man.
So Eric's our bonding attorney with Dickinson Wright. He prepared this resolution. Maybe you can just tell the board a little bit about revenue bonds and how they're different from the other bonds that we've done, which were more of general obligation type bonds.
Yep. This resolution before you does some things that are very similar to what you're used to seeing in the general obligation bond context, but is very different ultimately in total. As you may recall, a notice of intent was authorized and published back in March. The 45-day referendum period has passed and expired without a referendum being filed. This resolution before you this evening is the second and final step that the board has to take in order to authorize the issuance of these bonds. After this resolution is adopted, I'll prepare the closing documents for execution by the authorized officer of the township, and then proceed to closing as on the schedule that Aaron and Mr. Lufkin described earlier, around August 1st for the order of approval and the end of August for the closing. The resolution authorizes bonds up to a not-to-exceed amount of $5 million. The expected principal amount, though, will only be about $2.855 million, I believe. The $5 million corresponds to the notice of intent amount that was published earlier. So there's no requirement to issue $5 million. It's just sticking with the same ceiling we've gone with the whole time. The resolution will pledge, this is where it's different from the normal general obligation bond context. The resolution pledges the net revenues of the sanitary sewer system for repayment of the bonds. That means the revenues come into the system, operation and maintenance is covered, and then the next amount of money that's remaining then goes to pay debt service. The resolution also authorizes the execution and delivery of a revenue sharing pledge agreement, which the state will expect to receive from the township. That was added in order to save the township $15,000 to $20,000 of credit assessment fees. Otherwise, you would have been required to get a credit assessment from a nationally recognized rating agency. We can skip that step with the revenue sharing pledge agreement. The resolution also requires the township to covenant that it will at least annually fix and revise rates and charges of the system to the users so that 100% of the operation and maintenance and 100% of the debt service is covered. The resolution, and this is what Mr. Roman was referring to a minute ago, establishes a structure, particularly in section 15 on the funds and accounts, for the revenues to be received and allocated to the needs of the system. First to operation and maintenance, first and always, and then second to redemption of the bonds. There were some other funds that originally were included in here for purposes of streamlining the accounting for the revenue system and for conforming this resolution to the existing practices, accounting practices of the township. The amendments that are illustrated in the red line at the dais, those were the reason for those amendments. Also, some conforming amendments were needed in order to account for the removal of the unhelpful funds that were already in here, and some conforming changes were needed to account for the small changes to the language conforming to the existing practices. If there are no, well, I guess at this time I'll take any questions on the resolution.
Any questions, Mr. Powell?
So, and I appreciate the presentation. The actual difference between these and the general obligation bonds are that, if I read between the lines properly, this is not being guaranteed by the general tax obligation of the township, but the township board then would adjust the fees of the sanitary sewer enterprise fund in order to cover the costs of this and all the other costs.
That's correct.
So what happens if it becomes so costly to the users that the users can't fund it, does this then provide that the township board can in fact apply general obligation taxes to this, or revenues, I mean, to this?
If there is deficiency, if there's a deficiency in the net revenues of the system, then what would happen is the revenue sharing pledge agreement would step in, and the state would withhold revenue sharing amounts of distributable aid.
So instead of us paying it back, they would withhold our revenues?
Yeah, you would be paying it back, but it would be offset through the distributable aid not being forwarded to you.
I see, okay. So it would be in the township's best interest as possible to collect the funds to repay these bonds through the sanitary sewer enterprise fund and not let it go to the revenue, shortage of revenues.
Absolutely. And that would be a technical default if the revenues did not cover 100% of operation maintenance and debt service, as the covenant requires. So there's a covenant in here that requires that. If you don't meet that, it becomes a technical default, which has negative credit implications elsewhere for the township. So yes, it would absolutely be the case that you'd want to make sure that annually the rates are fixed and revised in order to provide 100% for both of those amounts, the operation maintenance and the debt service.
Okay, in the past, there have been communities when we had the major downturn in 2008, townships who really pledged the full faith and credit of the township had to pay back bonds that were assessed against properties that were foreclosed on. And so there was a problem in paying those bonds back. So our revenues would be kept by the state if in fact we can't pay it back. Okay, I've got a handle of it.
That's correct. If the rates and charges don't cover it, then the distributable state aid would be withheld at the state level before any extra amounts were forwarded on to the township.
Okay.
Mr. Roman?
Eric, when you started speaking, one of the first things you said was there was something we were going to do to save money. Maybe was it $20,000?
Yeah.
Was that the pledge?
Yeah, so the revenue sharing pledge agreement that stands in behind the net revenue pledge of the system. So you have the net revenues of the system resulting from the rates and charges to the users. And then secondarily, the state will require the township to sign an agreement that says if our net revenues don't cover the debt service, you can withhold our distributable aid.
Okay, which is the state shared. Okay, so if we didn't sign that, what would happen?
You would have had to have applied to one of the nationally recognized statistical ratings organizations like S&P or Moody's or Fitch in order to get a credit assessment, which is something less than a full rating, but it's a program requirement for the state clean water state revolving fund.
Okay, so that agreement, is that part of the resolution, or is that
It's not.
something-
It's separate, and the authority to sign that agreement is delegated within this resolution. It's a two-page agreement. It's very straightforward. It says, under Act 227, you are entitled to some amounts under the state, and you're pledging that as additional security for the payment of the bonds. If you don't pay, we step in and withhold the necessary amounts to cover the debt service.
Okay, and I think you had mentioned that a motion to approve this, maybe the best thing we do is include in the motion that you have put some amendments in this.
Yeah, I would recommend a motion to approve resolution number 23-021 with amendments described by bond counsel, as well as any additional conforming amendments needed to complete the resolution.
Can we put that in the form of a motion?
Absolutely.
I'll put that in the form of a motion, Hannah, if you got it.
I have a motion, looking for support.
I'll support that.
I have support from Andy Voorhees. All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it.
Thank
Opposed?
you.
May I have a roll call vote? I'm sorry.
Oh, I beg your pardon, it is roll call vote. Roll call vote.
Clerk Noble, yes. Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Trustee Voorhees.
Yes.
Trustee Powell.
Yes.
Treasurer Roman.
Yes.
Trustee Ruggles.
Yes.
Supervisor Kowal.
Yes. Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Eric.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Item H, request to approve DLZ Engineering Construction Service Proposal, CWSRF 5800-01 sanitary sewer lining. Who sits around your office and looks at this stuff and figures out how much cash back we're going to get and how much you're going to charge us? It's just an obvious question.
Perfect answer, Mike. Just leave it at that.
Okay, all right.
Plead the fifth.
Okay, that little being said, any questions or comments on the board on the proposed that we are going to obviously have to have someone monitor this project to make sure that everything is done according, not only properly, but also to the state's satisfaction. And we could move forward on this. We have a cost of $233,750 in the amount. Is that correct, Michael?
That's correct.
That's correct.
I want to point out that that's a budget estimate, but this is a unit price hourly contract with a not to exceed. 10% is an exorbitant amount of time for construction inspection. That, as you can imagine, I was telling the supervisor that in 5 years in designing 3 or 4 miles of sanitary sewer, I have yet to even approach $250,000 for design. And this is just for the, we've already approved the design of everything. This is just for construction observation. So I have 2 questions. Number one, why can't we put the burden on the county to inspect this project? They're charged to maintain our system, and I'd like to count on them to do something, and I'm sure Aaron has the appropriate response. And number 2, I'm going to question, this type of contract gives our consultant an open checkbook up to $230,000. And so they can put any number of people on this job just to stand there and lean on a shovel to watch work being done, instead of relying on a contractor to do it right with spot checks. And so I have no problem with the concept. We need our consultant to be able to do some work, but to have somebody full-time, I believe, is inappropriate. And I don't have any problem with the unit prices or anything, but I'm looking for maybe a response back from DLZ as to how they might minimize the out-of-pocket costs that we have to pay them.
I'd like to respond actually
Please.
quickly, if I may. So, correct, this is a budget item that was 10% of the overall construction project. And it is a unit priced, it's a unit priced proposal. So what you have there is a not to exceed amount, but that is largely going to be contingent on the contractor's ability to get that work done in a reasonable amount of time.
Correct.
So the township standards require full-time inspection for underground utility work, for water, sewer, storm, any type of underground utility work. The township board could decide at some point to amend those standards, but we haven't so far. So those are the township standards. So the project and all of the costs associated with the project are reviewed first in Mike's office when the contractor submits. When Mike submits his pay application, his approved pay applications to me, along with their DLZ invoices, that also comes with their inspector daily reports. That gets reviewed by me. Once we've approved all of those, then they would go into a disbursement request and pay application approval request that gets signed by the supervisor, sent to the state, where it is reviewed again by the state that's monitoring the project. So I feel like we have a pretty robust review process in there to make sure that folks aren't leaning on shovels. But, and so when a contractor calls for inspection, they give 24-hour notice for inspection. DLZ inspector is going to schedule to be out there for usually a half day minimum. 9 times out of 10, our contractors are doing a pretty good job, but we've had plenty of contractors that needed a lot of review and weren't doing all that great of a job. On a project of this scope, I would be a lot more comfortable with full-time inspection, but if, again, the board decides that you want to amend the township standard to allow for spot inspection on underground utilities, then that would be something that we would have to put in, bring to the board, and or maybe you have the power to do that now, but that is, these numbers were developed to the standards that we currently have.
In response to that, and I appreciate that very much, I think you're mischaracterizing the township engineering standards. You quoted it correctly, or you started to. It's the installation of utilities. It's not underground work. So it's not a full-time inspection of underground work with that big umbrella. That's a huge umbrella between all underground work and the installation of the public utilities. And he's quoting correctly, 10 state standards and the state guidelines. For public utilities, you want full-time inspection because you're taking that utility over and you're responsible then from then on to maintain that. And we want to make sure it's done right. Totally agree. But for repairs, I don't believe that it actually applies to that. And so when they're pulling lining through, they're doing their job. We're hiring a contractor due to his professionalism, their professionalism. And spot check is, in my opinion, is adequate. And then it's televised after all that. So after it's all put in, then it's televised to guarantee it's done properly. And we don't really need somebody spending, a company spending $250,000 standing around making sure the contractor's doing what the contract says he's supposed to be doing when we can back check it. So I don't know how to control that, except that we have staff that in the wintertime aren't painting hydrants, they're not flushing hydrants. So I'm wondering whether or not we have staff that can be out there babysitting, because we can hire 3 people in-house to do the job that their our subcontractors looking to do. And that's an annual fee. We could hire them for a year, 3 employees. So I've harped on this many times in that DLZ does a great job. We like them as a contractor, but I don't want them to be able to retire on a township job. And so I'm asking them to rethink. I'd like them to go back with our department head and rethink this contract and maybe hone it down a little bit. That's an enormous amount of money, and it comes out of our pocket.
Can I comment?
Mr. Roman.
Oh, Mike, as far as the services that you're going to complete under this proposal, is it for the most part 1 person? Is it 2 people that are out there all the time?
So there's a couple components here. You're dealing with an SRF project. So there's administrative requirements. We have to review contractors' pay applications. We have to review certified payrolls, make sure all of that is compliant with all of the rules of the SRF. So there's an administrative component that would be done in the office. And we were expecting, based on just our knowledge of White Lake and everything that we've ever done, some on-site inspection. So that'd be the on-site person, right? So it'd be 1 person working with the crew, unless they have, I don't expect this, but unless they had 2 different setups and they were, 1 person
I didn't know that
cover.
either.
But that's not going to be the case in this project, because they're going to bypass certain sewer segments, and they're not going to be able to do that multiple times down the road. So it'd be 1 individual with that contractor watching them. In this instance, I think a lot of the things that Aaron talked about are going to be important here. Traffic control is going to be critical, because a lot of the sewer is right down the middle of the road, so we're going to have a large impact. We're going to have to be working with the contractor, making sure they're allowing access to residents' homes, stuff like that. Make sure everybody's notified if there's any shutdowns. So there will be some time component with that stuff. I totally appreciate that that's a lot of money, and I just want everybody to understand, specifically this one, I wanted to make sure it was a rate schedule not to exceed. Couple reasons. It is a lot of money. 10% is probably more than we'll need on this. We kept that number because it was in the original state budget, and I didn't want to confuse them. They were getting kind of, when we were talking about the reduction in the project amount, they were already getting kind of confused about budgets, but that's not an excuse. I'm just saying it's just establishing a number, but we're not out there on our own volition. We're out there at the township's request. We're out there at their behest. So we work with Director Potter. When he wants us out there, that's when we're out there. If there's certain things that we come to be comfortable with the contractor, as he's doing a great job, and we're not needed as much out there, I'm happy to pull back. It's whatever you guys want and need. We're just here to support you. It's definitely not, to retire off of one job. We're just, trying to support you guys in the effort, to the extent necessary. I get what you're saying, that it's a lot of money, and I get the implication of an open checkbook, but I sincerely hope you understand that's not how we operate, or I operate anyways, so.
I think, Mike, you've proven yourself time and time again
Absolutely.
to the township, and I don't feel that you would willingly take advantage of the township, so I have absolutely no concerns there whatsoever. As far as the technical end of things, the regulatory paperwork that's required, these are not in our wheelhouse. We need someone like your firm to handle all that type of regulatory paperwork and things of sort. We don't have anyone on staff, nor are we going to hire anyone on staff that's going to handle that particular area of expertise. There may be times that they may not have to be on site. I'm certain of that. It's a pretty stiff number. There's no question about it, okay? But I also understand that the state had that as almost like a line item segment of 10% for in that particular area on this particular budget. So, I have a lot of faith in DLZ, and I have more faith in you than anything else, okay? So I'm comfortable knowing that you will do everything that you can to keep this particular cost on a minimum. Mr. Powell is absolutely correct in his statement. There are a lot of things that you look at, but I would say that if we did not have the relationship that we have, I may be more inclined to lean in a more conservative direction, but I believe that you and DLZ have our best interests at heart and will do the best for the township.
So in response, the normal engineering fee for a project is 10 to 15%, and that's all services from beginning to end, surveying, the whole 9 yards. They've already tacked us for upwards near 10% for the design and all the surveying and all of that, and the construction, staking, and layout, and now this is another 10%. So Mike's heart is very much like mine, and I've done SRF funds, I've done the inspection for them, and I've filled out all the forms. They're onerous, without a doubt. However, I've also had the opportunity to work for large companies. This used to be a much smaller company, Johnson Anderson. They were very personal, and they said, no, we don't need to go out now, and we can do things, we can rely on this contractor during this process. Just be blunt. The bigger corporations are in business for one reason only. It's to make money, not to help. The DLZ doesn't exist to help White Lake Township. They're in the business to make as much money as they can. And this contract will allow them to do that, because who's making the decision? Really, they're making the decision as to how many people need to go out. And I'm not looking for Aaron to say, I'm sorry, those guys aren't working for the next 3 hours, send your guy home. He's not going to be doing that. He's going to be relying on DLZ. And so if this were 5% not to exceed, it wouldn't even be an issue to me. 10%, $250,000, that's a lot of money that they can count on in their bottom line a year, and that bothers me. So I'll be voting no on this unless we are able to table this for them to go back and try to evaluate somehow we've got a great contractor. They evaluate the contractors when they bid. That contractor can do all the work themselves. We're only trying to meet a bureaucratic obligation to spend $250,000.
Can I comment real quick?
Please.
So a couple of things that I didn't mention before. So you asked about the, why can't we leverage the county? So this is a capital improvement project. Our agreement, which we are all working on with Oakland County, does not include capital maintenance projects. So we do not have included in our contract with them for sewer operations services for resident inspection on huge capital improvement projects. So, our office, we have more than enough capability to manage compliance and manage the paperwork involved in DWRF or Clean Water SRF projects. It's a time management issue. We are a skeleton crew here at the township. The wintertime, I don't have staff that's available to go out and monitor construction progress or repair progress. To some extent, in smaller projects, yes. But, we have 5 well houses, 2 water towers. We have to maintain all those sites. There's a lot of equipment in those water supply sites. Primarily my staff, when the construction season for residential homes and we wrap up hydrant winterizing, we're into the end of November, early December. From December through early May, or early March rather, we're working on plant maintenance. We have chlorine gas systems, we have chemical pump systems, we have pump maintenance that has to get done. We've got, loads of equipment. I'd love to take you for a tour of those facilities. But it's not like we're slow in the wintertime. We're not slow at all. The other thing that I would point out is if we're uncomfortable with resident inspection, then make a motion tonight to allow us to not have to do resident inspection. I disagree with not having full-time inspection on a project of this size and scope and the just the criticality rating of these segments of pipe and the consequence of failure. Those are terms that we use in the industry to put a number on how bad is it going to be if this thing stops working. And on your main trunk line of sanitary sewer for the entire township, the criticality of failure is extremely high, and the consequence of failure is extremely high. So if this pipelining fails, or if there's a mistake made by a contractor with bypass pumping and we have a blockage, or, what's going to happen is a sanitary overflow. It's going to be
I'm going to interrupt you just quickly
turn away from a sanitary overflow.
because you're painting the ultimate conclusion if you had a system failure. But the observation, the guy observing this work is standing up top, all the work's being done underground. He has no idea what's been done or how good it is until after it's been televised. So the guy standing on the top of the ground is not going to say, you did that wrong and it's going to fail in 2 years. That doesn't happen. So that's why the checking is done afterwards. So bottom line is, our staff does a great job, without a doubt, and I never even thought that they sat around and didn't do anything. My question is, I don't believe that DLZ's bottom line budget should be $233,000 for observing construction take place and taking notes. That's just my personal opinion.
Mr. Pearl, I would support you in tabling this to come back next month and try to see if we can hone down this cost.
Again, the milestone schedule, this is due to the state tomorrow. The milestone schedule was negotiated, and the state has an aggressive timeline for SRF. We don't have till next month to bring this back to the
So the
township.
state requires our contract with DLZ?
Requires tentative agreements for the construction and for all the contracts associated with the project
But this is part of
But
what's
we're-
going to go to the state.
This is going to go to the state tomorrow.
And Mike, in your opinion, if we do change it, then it deviates from the budget that you already turned in, correct? And you're thinking that could be an issue with them?
It does. It would deviate from the budget. I don't know how big of an issue it would create.
It would, because it could give them the appearance that we're trying to overborrow. If you reduce your number,
Yeah, but go back to the design. I just pulled up my design. You have that budget there, right?
yep,
So in there,
the last page.
what did we have for design in that project?
$187,019.
So our proposal for design was well below that. It was $130,000 for design. We budgeted $20,000 of that for geotech soil borings along the route.
Sure.
Which we didn't end up doing because Aaron found soil borings from the original project. So I'm not gonna build $20,000 of that original 130 because we already had the information. So I'm just using that as an example. Just because I have it under contract doesn't always mean, and I appreciate the concept, the comments about a bigger corporation, I understand that. But you guys, I've worked with you guys enough to hopefully earn some trust to know that on that design project, I'm not gonna bill you for $130,000 because we didn't do all that work. You're not gonna see that. You're gonna see at least $20,000 short of that. So similarly, on the construction side, when I presented the proposal to our management, I said, I have to do this as a rate schedule not to exceed, especially knowing that we're talking about negotiating down the contract quantities that the contractor's gonna build, which theoretically is gonna reduce time that we're gonna be out there.
Correct.
Again, we just kept the budget. It's not that I intend to use it. And again, I'll be out there at the township's request on their behalf.
Okay, that being said then, in order to push this thing forward, I think we can accomplish the same thing. I think we can pass this for the state, get Aaron to have all the documents he needs to be able to send to the state tomorrow. But then I would like a detailed report from DLZ, working with Director Potter, to provide for us a little bit narrower scope of work for their observation of this project.
I got a question.
Noble.
Well, that being said, doing that, couldn't we back that number down to like not to exceed 7.5?
You can't change the contract, Henry.
You can amend it.
Well, we want to make sure that we don't screw up the state approval
I
of the
don't want to screw
project.
up, take a chance with the
But
application.
remember that this is all based upon their time and material, so it's a unit price contract. So if we can have a scope of work defined in an agreement between our director and DLZ that this board can appreciate, to where they're not going to have a guy standing out there every day for 8 hours watching nothing because all the work's being done in a sanitary sewer underground.
Confined area.
In a confined, yeah. So he's going to be standing around saying, okay, what are they doing now? Okay. He can show up, he can write his report and say, this day, they completed the section from 0 + 0 0 to 3 + 50, and that's part of the daily work. So I appreciate that, and I think DLZ can put together a proposal like that for us, that supplements this.
Yeah.
What
So-
would also help is a schedule from the contractor to know,
Excellent.
because if he's only anticipating 4 months' worth of work,
Yeah.
we can kind of base it off of that.
Okay, trustee Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So, I'm agreeable to what Mr. Powell just proposed because we don't want to hold up to the state. But in the future, Mr. Potter, if you could bring these things to us not at the last minute, because basically, you're asking us just to rubber stamp this and you gave us no opportunity or time to change it, or if we have the right to change it or request different things. And so when you bring it to us and say it's due tomorrow, then you're kind of painting us in a corner where we can't change it, or we're not able to turn it into the state on time.
I agree 100% on that. This is kind of a construct of the revolving fund process. They put together a milestone schedule that is extremely aggressive. We did ask the state to allow for these things to spread out a little bit more to give the board, lots of time, but it does not work like that with the state revolving fund. So when we received this and you guys got this package, I think, late last week, middle of last week, something like that, that really was as soon as we could get it to you. We just got the bids back, and all of this stuff was contingent on those bid numbers to give us the direction. And then from the time we got the bids back on, I believe, the 11th, we had to work with the state on figuring out what we were going to do with the bids. There was about a 3-day negotiation period there. And then we essentially had, just probably 3-4 days to put this together. I got this to Trish in the last hour of the day on board package due on Friday. So
I don't think
I
we got
really
our board
didn't.
packet till about Thursday, but just in the future, if it's possible, because we may likely make changes or want to make changes, and then when we have such a tight timeline that is due tomorrow, we're not
Understandable.
able to do so, and
Again, with this project, it's really the state that's in the driver's seat of when things happen. I really did feel that this was a proposal that was in line with the township's policies and our design procedure, our construction procedures. We're more than happy to, if you tonight want to allow me to amend our normal construction requirements, we can work with that. We'll say all of the agreements, not just these agreements, but any agreements that we have associated with this project will have to be reviewed by the state. So, what I would really like you to do is approve this tonight as proposed and allow me to work with Mike and our contractor to get the job done in a reasonable amount of time. I think I have a pretty good track record of making that happen since I came here. To my knowledge, we haven't been.
I don't think anyone has an issue with the timeline. We have an issue with the cost.
Well, the timeline will directly affect the cost,
Yeah,
because if the
they
timeline
are.
is shorter,
Sure,
the cost will
they're
go down.
connected, right?
I guess,
They're relying upon each other.
due respect, the cost was in the project plan, which was the first time that we brought this to the township board. The first proposal that we brought to the township board was DLZ's overall proposal for the project planning, which included some of these costs. The following month, we brought the project plan, which I have sitting right here, that had the budget, and we went over the budget with a presentation with Kyle and Mike from DLZ. So, we've known about these costs for close to a year now. So
Yeah, okay, Mr. Potter, and
we're in the final hour now. I guess.
we're winding right down. We need to move this through. I understand your concerns. I have a lot of faith in,
I would like a report brought back to the
and
board.
it's a very reasonable
Okay, good.
request, okay? So I would like to make a motion to approve this as submitted, not to exceed $233,750 on a sidebar, subject to
Review and approval.
review and approval, okay?
township
By the
attorney.
township attorney. Okay?
And
Well, that's going to be a separate
township
footnote.
approval, okay.
I'm
right.
going to handle that in a second, okay? That'll be the first part of this, so that'll be for the requirements of the state. So I'll make that in the form of a motion. Looking for support? Looking for support?
Support.
Roll call vote?
Supervisor Cowell.
Yes.
Treasurer Roman.
Yes.
Trustee Powell.
Yes.
Trustee Voorhees.
Yes.
Trustee Smith.
Yes.
Clerk Noble, yes. Trustee Ruggles.
Yes. I'm also going to make a footnote motion that there will be a requirement for reports on this particular project to be brought back to the board for cost control measures and related to the inspection fees that we just approved. Make that in the form of a motion.
Can I suggest maybe?
Absolutely.
Instead of reports based upon the construction, I'm actually looking for an amendment report from DLZ as to how we can control the observation time of their office on this project.
You have that, Hannah? Okay, I'll put that in the form of a motion. You will
I'll
second
support
it?
it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Roman?
Oh, no, I'm not opposed.
Oh, okay.
I'm an aye, but I had a comment. I
Oh.
just had a question for Mr. Lufkin on this topic. I know Lisa had asked for a legal review. I think, did you already send some issues? Do you know if your legal team made any changes to the contract?
I got some markups before the meeting. that I'll coordinate with Lisa.
So you
in
did
the
get
morning.
markup, so
Yeah.
it's on the way.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mike, if I make, I don't mean to speak out of turn, can you clarify exactly what you're looking for from us on this?
I can, but
Because you
I'd like to,
sent an
I'd like to
amendment report,
start
I'm not
with
sure what that
a
is.
statement first, because as the director of the Department of Public Works, I personally would expect you to bring whatever suggested changes that you might have in any of our standards, any projects whatsoever, bring it to our attention and say, I think it would be more advantageous if we modified this document this way. So we don't have to direct you to do that. We'd be looking for you to say, we don't need to do this. And I'll give you an example. Running PVC all the way through a low-pressure sewer manhole structure instead of changing to 4-inch ductile iron on both sides, that should be brought to this township, and if we need to make that change, we do it. And so I'm looking for you to make that suggestion to us.
So I guess that's done.
Yep.
Yep.
So this now, what
But
I'm.
I guess
Yeah.
if I don't agree with your suggestion, then I would be looking for you to work with me to come to someplace where either we agree
These are
or.
gonna be your suggestions, and then this board will respond to those, unless you and I have a sidebar prior to you
I
introducing it
would
to the
strongly
board.
recommend
Yeah.
there be potentially,
Yeah.
excuse me, gentlemen, we have
Yes.
sewer meetings.
Yeah.
This is a good topic for the sewer
It's a
meeting.
great topic.
Yeah, and let's just all be clear, like, I want to, I want to bring to you what you want to see. At the same time, I want to operate the system in the best way that I know how. And I think we'll be at the same place in the
I
end.
agree.
It's just, I want to make sure that we're on a.
The end result
I
has
wanna
to be
Understand
perfect.
exactly what you're looking for
Okay,
from me.
we need to move on to the next
If I
item.
could, just give direction, I'm looking for DLZ to come back and say, we really expect that we will provide this type of inspections and not require full-time, but work with the contractor. Bottom line is, I think you know what I'm talking about. We don't provide full-time inspection on a number of things, but we go out and check and verify that things are done. So, any questions, we can talk later.
Yeah, I think we need to have some
Yes.
discussion on a few items.
Yep.
In particular, the PVC through the structure. That's the bone of contention of mine.
That's done. That's already handled.
That's part of our new standard?
Yeah, that's the understanding.
I knew we talked about it, I didn't know we adopted it.
We
Okay.
did that.
All right, good,
time, yeah,
okay.
that's
All right, good. Moving on.
Yes.
Request to approve tentative award for Suburban Knolls for well house demolition. As you know, we had a well house at Suburban Knolls location, which is up behind Speedway. It had been there since the 60s. It was originally part of, I think, a subdivision well, community well. And of course, along the way, White Lake Township absorbed it as well as others over the years and into our system. It went through a testing process here a few years ago, and it was determined that those wells had exceeded their usefulness, and they have been decommissioned since 2020?
2020.
Yeah, okay, it seemed like it was in 2019. But the wells were abandoned in 2020, and the site has been disconnected from utilities, and an asbestos abatement has been removed, and the structure is ready to go. So, Mr.
Potter.
Cotter, God, my brain is not working today for some reason. I keep wanting to
You
say
need a
Powell.
vacation, that's
Yeah,
what
I
you
need, to get one of, I'll take your 3-weeker in
there you go.
Yellowstone. How's that sound?
It works.
Got room in that trailer where the generator is, you know?
Plenty.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So I'm looking at this here, it's got $26,300 for the demo, and this is the first time I think I've ever seen a contingency on a demo. $3,500 contingency. Could you explain that?
Well, we had an asbestos abatement done on the project, but there is asbestos, or was asbestos in the structure. The structure hasn't been demoed yet, so it's possible that they, locate additional asbestos.
And then they would charge us for that, $3,500?
Their contract is a base bid, so items that were above the proposal would be additional items.
How would they know during the demo if they came across asbestos?
Well, they would be the determining factor on that, and we did
Something
that
would
by
just say,
design.
I'm asbestos?
There are certain materials that will stand out, and anybody that's
It's
done,
not definable, is it? I mean,
oh, yes, it is, yeah.
Except the guy on the shovel is not down identifying the broken vinyl.
so if that were to take place, wouldn't the company that we hired for the abatement be on the hook?
No, their contract specifically says, and all the abatement contracts from those type of companies typically say that they're not responsible for items that were missed.
Really?
Yeah.
They
I
may
mean,
be
they did
concealed in the
identify some
construction.
asbestos on the, and that was actually included in my bid spec. But, and it was removed on a separate project. But that being said, any type of a project where we're doing demo, I think I know what's underground on that site, and I think I know where everything goes. But those bids were based on linear feet and quantities. And as we know from Elizabeth Lake Road water main, when the library, thought that they were gonna directionally drill. We don't know everything that's underground there. So
Right.
it is typical and common for us to add contingency to all construction projects.
Yeah, but not on a demo. I've never seen it. We've had houses that have had asbestos abatement, right?
Correct.
One we took down, and Hoffman's bid, or I think it was Hoffman American Recycling, they didn't have a contingency. It just got demoed.
Yep. I
This is
think
a
you guys had some
little bit-
issues with Hoffman's project. I mean, I put it in there because it's our practice, and I think it's a good practice, but if you're not comfortable with the contingency, we can remove it.
Well,
Their
it just
base
seems
bid
like
didn't
there's a
include it, I
contingency on
included it.
everything now,
Say that
right?
again?
It just seems like there's a contingency on every number I look at.
Let's just define something a little differently. Their base bid is their bid. I don't believe the contingency should be part of their bid. That is our budget, and we should know that whenever we do something like this, we need to have a contingency in our budget. It's up to them to come back to us and say, this is not in our contract. It's not up to us to point out and say, you're doing work that you didn't bid on.
I think it should be
It's all-
26.3, and if something goes awry, they eat it.
Well, let's be clear, they didn't add contingency to their bid. Their bid was 26.3.
Yeah.
I added contingency to you so that for the purpose of getting the work done, if something comes up that's an additional item that was not in their specification, then I would have to stop their project, come back to you, and they're gonna have equipment sitting out there until I can get them in front of another board agenda. So it is
But
good
tell 'em-
practice.
I would say in that case, it's 26.3, and if something goes, they eat it, not us, It's 26.3 to demo the place, and that's it. That's what I would say.
Mr. Roman.
Well, if there's an
Certainly
emergency,
run that
our
by 'em.
township supervisor can sign it, you can request money up to what? 10,000. So I think you'll be okay.
Well, if your motion includes a not-to-exceed amount, then I don't think you'll be okay to go above that amount without coming back to the
He's done it
township
before. If it's an emergency.
I mean, if you guys are good with that,
talking-
again, I guess I don't know the processes anymore, so.
In this
if
case,
we're, if we're
I
good to that,
concur
then we
with
don't
Aaron
wanna-
Potter in that when I present a budget, I always tell the township, or I tell my client, this is the contractor price. However, for your budgeting, I don't want to stop all work until we come back to you, council, for additional funds. So in your budget, include 5% or 10%, just so that we can keep the project going. Totally understand what you're saying. And then that's up to Aaron then to say, no, that was in your budget and keep working. But then if an emergency happened, I'd like them to keep working on it. I do want to,
think
I do want to point out to all you guys, keep in mind, look at this, look at these bids. This is why it's so critical
Yeah,
to have as
26,
many
65,
bids as
and
we can.
144. It's,
Look at the difference
I
in
brought it up
price.
to Aaron earlier today. I've never seen anything like it.
44.
Spread.
And what are we getting for 144? I mean, it must be something just
Same thing.
unbelievable, you know?
You need to get in this business.
A higher contingency is what you get in
That's
the
it, yeah, bigger
144.
contingency.
So what you're saying, Mr. Powell, is that
These are
I'm
their
being,
numbers, not mine.
I'm henpecking this really low number for no good reason?
You're not giving the contractor a raise, you're giving the township the ability to recognize extras. That's,
There,
I'm just making the point that I've never seen that, and usually when there's a bid, a quote to demo something, you know, you pay the bill, and that's the end of it,
Yeah.
right?
So-
I've never seen it like
so
this.
their quote is included in this, in, let's see, page 6. And like I said, their quote does not have contingency in it. That's best practice that the township has established since the Lakeview Sanitary District, when we ate
yeah.
$77,000 of engineering fees because we didn't include contingency enough to make that project go. So since then, we have included contingency in all of our construction projects, including all the way down to grinder station installations.
And I
They
can
would
understand that,
include
but
$3,500.
I wouldn't call this construction project. This is a demo.
Well, I think it's,
All
I
right,
mean,
we
it's
can say
semantics.
tomato, tomato all day long.
A site doing something to utilities, so
Mr. Roman?
Hey, where's the contract from them? I don't have it attached here.
that's, can you pass that? Oops, I'm sorry, I only gave you half of it.
Because guess what? They're gonna want 35.
Oh, just a one pager?
Yeah, it's in the,
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
This is just the
Guess what I
bid.
just found?
Oh, this is the bid?
And yeah, the bids did
I
come
just
back
found
all over the
$34.
place.
Oh,
So
is there a contract? Don't they have a contract though?
that
too?
is the proposal.
144.
That would be reviewed
This
by
is
the
their
township.
contract, you're saying?
That would be their,
sign here.
that would be their contract, and that's gonna be
Accepted
subject to
by-
attorney
Liability
review.
requirements and-
Good question. Hopefully that's in there as well.
Say that again?
The attorney's just asking where is all their insurance papers and all that stuff. Prior to
I
that
saw
being
it in the
signed,
packet.
typically they forward that to the township to make sure it's
No,
done.
but, I'm sorry, can I
So,
say
Lisa?
something, please?
Yeah, please,
Please,
Counselor.
real quick, if we can, that stuff typically after the construction contract is tentatively awarded, subject to an attorney review, will come to us in the next week or so.
So you will get a
And- yeah,
contract that
correct.
I will be able to review.
Yeah, it's essentially going to be that
Contract.
with their terms and conditions that we agree on. And then the township's insurance requirements, all of those things. Once we have their insurance certification, insurance certificate, and we'll have a pre-construction meeting or a pre-demolition meeting for, you know,
So they can
call it
award the
that,
bid, subject to review and approval of the township, of the contract by the township attorney.
That's always
is correct.
done afterwards.
It says if accepted.
and yes, the other bids were terrible.
Incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
That being said, when I came to you guys in 2018, I believe it was, to request permission to start the process to demo this well house, we thought that a budget number was going to be $30,000. And this bid obviously is in line with our original budget, which I've been budgeting on my water budget that you guys have reviewed since that time, every year. And this project, we had to sue for title on this to get title for the well house before we could demo it, and that took 2 years.
Oh,
So
you nailed it, Aaron.
it's
All right,
just been a long
so-
time coming.
Need a motion?
Yes.
Contract.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't recall any contingencies on previous demos. So I think we should stick to a flat fee and not set a new precedent, and then authorize a supervisor, if a contingency is needed, that goes above this flat fee for a demo.
Is that a motion?
It says the same thing.
I will put
Yes.
that in
Yeah,
the
but
form of a
she's-
motion.
That,
I agree. Is that a motion?
Is that a form of
Sure,
motion?
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
I'll support that.
Do you have a motion? You get the motion, Hannah?
I didn't hear it.
Trustee
Can you
Smith?
repeat the motion, please?
Sure, that we would award the contract to, Blue Star for a flat fee of $26,300, and we'd authorize Supervisor Kowal, if need be, a contingency
And attorney review?
and attorney review.
what amount would you like the contingency to be?
To not exceed
10,000.
I think it's better if you don't even say an amount.
Yeah, don't say anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably, you're right.
I agree.
I mean, I don't know how it normally works, but the bottom of this says that if you sign this, they're gonna start the work. There's nothing about a
They'll
contract.
notify them by
Before you
phone
give this to them.
Yes.
for the additional items that he needs to review. And so that you know, the crazy engineer at the Village of Wolverine Lake does all the review and the attorney doesn't. So that's just a little word to the township staff.
I just wanna make sure we have liability covered, we have indemnification covered.
Absolutely right.
Aaron has done this a couple
It's in the bid specs, and so it's
with all of it.
related right there. Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion.
Support.
We have support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on. Okay, all that about tearing something
Oh,
down.
my goodness.
Request
grandkids can
for
do a better job.
consideration of A133 and A201 agreements with McCarthy and Smith. I would like to thank the construction committee and Mr. O'Neill for your, and the attorneys
Amen.
involved,
Absolutely right.
for your painstaking review, although these are AIA documents, and I do not want to use the term boilerplate, but I am going to tell you they are industry standards, okay? Used from one end of this country to the other. Actually, they're used in some cases internationally. So I feel fairly comfortable with the reviews that have been done. Mr. O'Neill.
Well, it has been very hard for me to sit here for 2 hours, and these
bet.
are the first words I've spoken to you guys tonight.
You look so sharp, too.
Thank you. I am wearing tennis shoes, though, just for the record. As the supervisor just mentioned, these are standard agreements, and the township attorney is well-versed in, how these agreements apply to these types of contracts. And, we went through, for the architects, the B-133 agreements, one for each, and we also negotiated a contract with the civil engineers, which was not an AIA document like the architects and like these before you tonight. But the A-133 is the standard form of agreement between owner and construction manager. And then also the A-201 is the general conditions of contract for construction. So these two are both necessary in order to engage with McCarthy and Smith in the construction of the new Township Hall and Public Safety Building. So the committee has worked with, the committee really I consider is really the whole team. So it is comprised of board members, but also several attorneys. The township attorney has participated, well, I need to be more specific. Lisa has participated, John Gaber has participated, and Eric, who is here tonight, McLaughlin, has also participated because we wanted to ensure that the language in this agreement that involves the eventual bonding and all the timing of that was even appropriate. So it was really a team effort, and I should also acknowledge McCarthy and Smith because you'll see in the marked up documents that you have and that we're also sent some supplemental information today. Bill McCarthy has been the one negotiating for the McCarthy and Smith team, and he's been very agreeable. So I think my memo to you mentions that McCarthy is reviewing the comments. Since the memo dated July 10th was circulated to you, I can confirm with you that he's responded in writing, that he agrees to all the conditions that the staff, the board, and the attorneys involved have suggested be included or omitted in some cases. So what you have before you is not clean, it's marked up, but we wanted to be able to show you kind of what everybody's comments, where everybody's comments fell. It's pretty straightforward. I think at this point, though, because Bill is out of town, he couldn't be here tonight, I would request respectfully that if you do take action to approve the A-133 and the A-201, you do so subject to the committee making sure that, we iron out any of these final comments that you have redlined before you to make sure that we're all on the same page with how they read. And then also, at that point, allow the township supervisor to sign. One person who I didn't mention who's played a pretty important role in this is Craig Manser from IBEX. He's reviewed all the insurance requirements in these contracts to make sure that we are covered in that area as well. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. The memo, though I wrote it, is really from all of us on the committee. So anything that the committee members may have to add that I didn't cover, please jump in.
Mr. Powell, Mr. Roman, do you have anything you want to add?
I can certainly add that this is one of the most boring documents that you'd ever want to read.
It will put you to sleep.
And I did not fly spec it, read through just basic items. As Mr. O'Neill, Director O'Neill said, it's been reviewed by a number of attorneys that we paid a lot of money to review this and make recommendations, who have our best interest in mind, and therefore, I'm not going to fly spec it. So it's very standard, though, and really, Mr. O'Neill did an excellent job summarizing it.
One thing I want to just add to clarify, and Mike, I don't know if you're going to say this, the original contract, the original proposal from McCarthy and Smith included 8 months of pre-construction services at $97,000, a lump sum for, an 8-month period of time. The clock started ticking in April on that, and they've been working, and I don't believe we've paid them a dime yet, and they haven't asked for it. They're very comfortable working with us, and we're very comfortable working with them. But the committee felt that if the township took longer than that 8 months, that was part of the original proposal, that they should be compensated accordingly. And the agreed upon rate was and it's in this document, was $12,000 a month. So if we wrap this thing up by January, by wrap up, I mean finalize the design so they can take these documents out, these design documents out to bid, then we're going to be in great shape. If this drags on beyond January, then it only seems equitable that, we pay them for it. And the agreed upon amount, or at least the recommended amount, was $12,000 a month.
Prorated based on the original proposal, like on a monthly.
Right, so the 97,000 is an automatic. If it goes into, January into February, then.
That's equitable.
Right, and it is prorated. It is basically $12,000 a month. So, I just wanted to make sure that was crystal clear.
That I think is and has been done before in other contracts that I have been involved in, so.
And I think we're going to be in good shape. The board has met several times. You guys are meeting again with the Planning Commission and the Civic Center Development Committee in 2 days' time. And we're meeting and working regularly with the architects and the engineers to keep pushing the design along. So I think it can certainly be done within the 8-month time window, but this was a sort of a just in case.
No, better to have that contingency in place.
And they didn't push us. I think the board members on the committee brought it up to them and said, well, what if? So it's gone very well.
Mr. Roman?
Yeah, no, McCarthy Smith has been really easy to work with, and Bill McCarthy in particular has been very agreeable to the changes that we've requested. We've gone around and around, and I think we're finally there. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve both the A201 and the A133, subject to the final changes agreed to by our committee, and also that the supervisor may sign these when they're finalized.
There's a motion, looking for support? Support. I have motion and support from Mr. Powell. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. All have it.
Thank you.
Move forward. Let's get the building built. Item K. I have a statement that I would like to read.
We heard you say aye.
To the board at this time. There is a request that all MAPE wage classifications be deferred and addressed during the MAPE wage classification review.
Mr. Supervisor, just a point of order, if I could, please.
Yes.
To our council, should we make a motion to pull this off the table since it was formally postponed last month?
No, this deferral does that. This,
Well,
they
no,
actually.
I meant the actual item, the actual item on the agenda.
To be honest with you, I thought on a postponement, you don't have to take it off the table,
Okay.
only with the table you
Okay,
do.
then I'm good with it. I just wanted to make sure we were straight.
But
Okay.
this will move it,
Sure.
move it
Understand.
forward, okay.
Right.
As the board is aware, we have been in the process of reviewing compensation on several levels throughout the township. Last month's executive salary reclassification request by the fire department has led to several additional similar requests for other MAPE employees. In addition to the changes we have already made as a board with respect to wages, I have also been having ongoing conversations with the HR and the labor attorney regarding MAPE wages. Since last month's board meeting, discussion regarding the fire department reclassification request, I have had further discussions with the in-house elected officials, the labor attorney regarding this topic. It was recommended this matter and the resulting other requests be deferred to the Township Labor Attorney for discussion with MAPE Union and for recommendation of a resolution to be brought forth before this board for consideration and approval. This process may take 60 to 90 days for a proposal to be submitted due to the availability of all parts involved and additional information to come forward. So that is my statement, and if anybody has a question at this time for the deferral, I would be glad to answer it. It does have the support of the fire chief.
What is the legal definition of a deferral versus a tabling and a postponement?
Well, I'm deferring it to the attorney and handing it to them to do the work.
But we as a board have to take certain action.
Not at this time, other than approving it to be handed over to the attorney.
No, I
There's a
believe we
table-
have to take action because we tabled it last month to specifically to the July meeting. So we do need to either rename K into something different, call it something different for this agenda item, because this legislative body gave direction to bring it back in July specifically. So if we want to take it to a motion and a vote to defer it to September or defer it to our labor attorney, we can, or we cannot.
In my opinion, there has to be a motion from this board in order to address the issue since it was specifically postponed to today's date. We have to recognize the fact that we postponed it to today. That doesn't mean exactly what you said, Mr. Supervisor, will not take place. I believe we just have to do it in a formal motion versus
I
just.
will ask the counselor.
I don't think anything on the agenda has to change. I think that your request was considering the request that was made for the reclassification last month, which was postponed to this meeting. You're asking this board to make a motion to agree, essentially, that the issue of the reclassification request from the fire department from last month be, for lack of a better term, deferred, meaning you're still going to deal with this issue, you're just going to deal with it in a different form, and that different form is reopening discussions on the MAPE contract. So a motion, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
did I say something wrong?
No, go ahead.
So the motion would simply be authorize the supervisor to continue discussions regarding the reclassification discussion for the fire department as well as other relevant departments through MAPE negotiations with Labor Council.
There you go.
I'm still, Mr. Powell and I agree on this, though. Procedurally, it should have come back onto this agenda for us to make a motion to either handle it tonight or to defer it. Then the second motion would be to vote on deferring.
No, the supervisor makes the agenda. You could have made a motion at the beginning of the meeting to add a new item if that's what you wanted.
But Mr. Roman's motion last month was specific to table it to July.
To postpone the issue of the reclassification to this meeting.
And that's what we're dealing with right now.
But he's asking that you handle it in a different
I
way.
understand
Yeah.
how he's asking. I don't agree procedurally how it happened.
But that's the procedure that
That's
we
the
have to
procedure.
follow.
Yeah.
So if
No,
I
not when
could,
you table
Mr.
something.
Supervisor, I move to postpone the issue regarding the reclassification and the reclassification of various positions in the township to postpone further discussion until the September board meeting.
Well, potentially it could come back earlier. I'm not saying
I've made that in the form of a motion. That's 2 months, that's 60 days. You said 60 to 90 days.
Yeah, I
And then-
can't guarantee.
And then a report back to the
Oh,
board.
that's fine, I don't have a problem with that.
As to what has been done, what has happened in that 60 days.
No problem at all with that.
So that was my motion.
I will support that motion, and if we don't have the information by September, our board has the opportunity to postpone it until the information's
Yeah,
available.
right.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
60 to 90, right? 16 and 90 days.
Well, that's what I
Because we
was-
have two contracts that are still open.
60
We
and
have
90.
fire and we have MAPE.
I understand what they're going to do. I don't have any problem with coming back September because if progress hasn't been made, it hasn't been made.
Yeah.
So it's that simple.
Right.
Absolutely
Yeah.
correct.
So
And if it's
you
not
made a
ready-
motion, repeat the motion for Hannah?
Did you get that, Hannah, or you want me to? Yeah, I thought
So
so.
this can be one
You
or two
support
votes.
it?
I have a question.
One vote.
Yeah, and if it's not ready by then, that's
I
totally
do have one
fine.
question.
Then we read.
Yeah, okay, let's get this done. Okay, so we have motion, we have support, all in favor?
Got a question down
Question.
here.
So we've done classifications in the last year and a half, 18 months, a year. Why wasn't this done at that
Okay,
time?
this isn't part of that discussion,
I know,
isn't part
I
of
just
this
wanna make a
motion.
point.
Okay,
Well-
so let's,
We can have discussion on, when there's a motion, if she'd like to have discussion.
No, that's my only question.
I didn't hear you, Andrea, I'm sorry.
Why is this now being done when we've already reclassified two other people? At the very first classification, we should have said, stop, let's reopen the state contract.
Labor law.
We've done this to two other people. That's my only comment, my only statement. If someone wants to comment back, they're more than welcome to, but we should have done this. at the
again,
very
I
first
defer to
one.
I defer to my statement,
I agree,
okay?
and I refer to my
So,
statement.
to move this forward, to move it forward, I'm recommending that we acknowledge your motion, your second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, next item, to allow the supervisor to.
Yeah,
Beg your
I'm
pardon?
sorry, I said no.
There's
I was-
an
I was
opposed.
quiet.
One opposed, okay. I beg your pardon. Okay. Next item would be to allow this item and resulting additional items for labor questions to be deferred to the labor attorney for further negotiations with MAPE.
I thought I included that in my postponement.
No, you didn't include this language.
So
I want-
you're looking for authorization to work
Yes,
with Labor
yes,
Council?
yes.
Don't you have that authority?
I do, but I want the board to understand exactly what's going on, being very transparent about this.
Well,
So I
under
want them to understand.
3.2,
I don't think you need a motion.
under the policy 3.12, you have that authority.
Oh, I know I do.
Myself and Treasurer Roman and the HR to represent the board's best interest during that.
So
The policy.
if you wanted to get that precise, then you need to identify every person that you're going to ask for information from. If you want to give us all that information and include that in a motion. But otherwise, it's all encompassing. Now, you just have to handle whatever you need to in order to
Yes,
get the
that's what
additional
I want,
information.
that's all I want to do, whatever I need to do to make it work.
He doesn't need authorization from this board, but he's asking for it. So he's simply asking for a motion to authorize the supervisor to work with Labor Council to reopen these MAPE contracts to
contract.
address the reclassification
Because they're going to
issue.
reopen them, like labor contract, so I'm bringing that forth to the board saying,
Oh, I
hey,
see. Now
hey, look here on the soapstone, I want to reopen a labor contract, so that's why I'm going for the board for the blessing.
And that would encompass all those nuances that
All the
Lisa was
nuances
just
there about.
under 3.
That's basically what I'm looking for.
I understood
Okay.
that, and I thought that was
I
going to
was
be
just
understood.
having more detail to it.
You actually want a motion, or you just want that understood as part of our
I think
discussion?
I'd like a motion, that I was given permission. Do I have that in the form of a motion, Mr. Powell?
Mr. Supervisor, go ahead.
Sorry. Are you saying, I can't always hear you when you turn your head. Are you saying to open all labor contracts or just reclassification?
Contract. MAPE
Okay, I just couldn't hear you, sorry.
All right,
I move to allow the supervisor to work with the township labor attorney regarding all the MAPE wage reclassifications that he might be proposing.
motion, looking for support?
Support.
I have support from Mr. Noble, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed.
I should have said up to a spending of $100.
Yep, I agree.
Motion carries. FYI, Cedar Island Road update. Counselor?
Yep, we are proceeding with litigation. We have a tight discovery schedule. Our witness and exhibit lists were due on Friday. I completed them and filed them with the court. Discovery must close by August 15th, so I also sent out, not many, but a few requests to admit interrogatories, request to produce to the attorney that's representing the trustee of the O'Kane Living Trust. She has 28 days to respond to those requests. I have until, I believe, mid-September to file a motion for summary disposition, which will be my next step. But in the meantime, we're still hopeful and we're still trying to get voluntary compliance. The structure, like I said, in the last few reviews, has been removed, which is progress, but there is still a lot of heavy equipment and junk and trash and debris on the property. They did hire a couple of contractors who Jason knows, and Jason actually spoke to, that he did hire them to remove some of the materials. They took out some dumpsters, removed some minor equipment, minor pieces of junk and debris. There is a long way to go. We are hopeful that we continue to get that progress. If we do, we might ask the judge to allow us to extend the date, so you're not continuing to spend money on litigation.
As long as you get cooperation.
But if we're not getting progress, or at least enough progress to sustain it, then we're gonna have to file a motion for summary disposition, asking the judge to just order the relief we're requesting.
So are we dealing with, are you dealing with the elderly gentleman that was removed, or are you dealing with the family?
Oh, there is an attorney who's representing the elderly gentleman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's of sound mind enough to make.
I mean, he has an attorney. She asks him questions when we're on I have status updates with her, and she asks him questions and asks him, do you understand? And he responds in the affirmative. I mean, she's the one who has the day-to-day contact with him. She's not articulated any concern as far as his mental capacity is.
Okay.
He does have a home on Sarah.
Any other questions for Lisa at this time? Seeing none. Moving on to Civic Center Committee update. Mr. Roman?
Well, I think everyone's seen the interior layouts of the buildings, and that schematic should be really close to being finalized soon. I know we're still waiting on some elevation information, and next would be the exteriors. Really haven't delved into that much yet. I'm hoping everyone's gotten an email from Nick about roof designs, and hopefully you guys are getting back with him on, what you liked and what you didn't like. The contracts, now with these construction manager contracts, that should all be in place now. I don't think we're done finally with the contracts, and they are painstaking.
Yes.
Tomorrow's meeting, I'm not gonna show because we can only have 3 trustees. And there was an issue that came up with earth moving and when you do it. Do you do some this fall? Do you wait until the spring? We were kind of advised to wait until spring. That's not my area of expertise, so Mike and Rick are gonna go tomorrow and hopefully address that issue. What else, Mike? Did I miss anything?
I believe that this board, and I want to thank this board as well, the presentations at our last meeting were very well received, and I want to thank each one of you for your input to move this thing forward. I think the floor plans, the staff has the floor plans and they've red marked them yet?
They have the floor plans. They were sent the floor plans just yesterday. They came out in your packet on Friday. They were sent those floor plans yesterday and asked to just look through them with their staff. And, again, they were reminded that this is still early on in the process, so changes can absolutely be and should absolutely be made. So, yes.
So we've micromanaged as much as we can in at least getting it close, but the staff, we want to yield to the staff's observations and input. Probably the biggest thing that struck me, and hopefully the rest of you, the building elevations, the picture of what the exterior of the buildings are going to look like that were submitted by Stu in his email are horrendous. I don't like them at all. I mean, you might as well might as well be down in the middle of Southfield with the high rises all around and.
Mr. O'Neill, does this conversation sound familiar?
Right.
We had a very similar
Yeah,
conversation
I'm not looking
today.
at those. I'm looking at
I'll
what
agree
Nick gave
on
us.
Yeah, Nick, and I like your comments. You like number 3, 7, and 10, or something like
Yeah,
that. And-
exactly what I
That's what I
and-
wrote.
And quite frankly, I'm in agreements with you, and I'm kind of waiting till tomorrow and Thursday to.
So we got that tomorrow. We'll address that with a couple other things, but.
Exactly.
But I pushed that out of my brain as far as looking at his elevations. I'm
Yeah,
looking
for
away.
some reason Stu.
Nick Spencer, our
Didn't get
building
it yet,
official, brought in awesome ideas
Yeah.
that I think would complement the adjacent building and have that flow that everybody envisions. I mean, I loved them.
I would ask if I could really quickly for Thursday's meeting, again, the Planning Commission and CCDC will be here with you. I think it's important when we go through this again, that you guys are very direct with all the people involved, all of the designers, and tell them exactly what you want, exactly what you like, rather than waiting for them to send something to you and say, man, this isn't really getting it. And so I would also ask you to I would encourage you to provide examples of either local buildings you've been, I don't care where they're at really. Nick put together that list of that slideshow, I'll say, of great examples of, I think, buildings that would kind of fit in the township better than the building that's being, tentatively or conceptually proposed right now. And so I think maybe selecting from that list and then adding others to it so we can really push back out to the design professionals, the kinds of ideas that the board has. And, Redstone has for 3 years now had a concept design, but hasn't refined it. So Stu's kind of catching up. Dan's got to kind of get going because what he gave us 3 years ago never really was fleshed out. It was just like, oh, this is interesting. It's part of a report. We're not ready to do anything yet. That needs a lot of work too. What Dan has isn't, in my mind, in line with.
A ranch house in a subdivision somewhere.
That's exactly what it looks like. And so while we talk that these buildings are not going to look the same, they will be similar. Someone will drive by and say, boy, these are owned and designed and operated in common to some extent. And so, but I think being specific about the architectural design and the building materials, very specific, not just tomorrow for the committee, but on Thursday especially, is going to be important for the architects.
How would we come together and identify like one look that we want to push back on these guys, right? You just said that we should have united front on maybe like 3 different designs that we like as a group to give back to them, like, look, this is what we like. How would we
Well, we were supposed to do that last meeting, and we didn't really quite formulate anything. There was too much silence. Sean and I just talked about this, so that's why he's asking us to be very direct, because we're at the crossroads where we have to be direct now.
How are we going to get direct if we don't have anything too direct?
Well, if you take a look at your emails, there's a series that Sean,
I've seen them. But
And if you don't
we
like
have
that,
to,
bring a new
come into
idea.
an agreement as a group.
Right.
And I was gonna ask Sean to have those presented up here, and then, and if you were to send out an email to Sean saying, like Anthony did, I like 1, 5, and 6,
Yeah, I
or something
responded
like
back to
that.
Nick, too.
that's what I
In that respect, he can put them together and say, 3 people like this design, 1 person like this design, and then we can kind of talk to the rest of the group saying, what do you guys think? And maybe after next Thursday's meeting, in 2 days, we can give the architects a plan that says, go this way. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, so rather than saying, this is number 7, we want this, there are certain elements that we want to see, certain materials that stand out to us on some of these buildings that we want you, and he's going to come up with something on his own based on the feedback, based on the materials, the roof pitch, kind of
Completely
look.
opposite, but yes.
Well,
If I may, I think what Scott's trying to express is what I was trying to express last meeting, is we really need to come up with a feel and a concept. Do we want to be a timber architect? Do we want to be a barn? Do we want to be quaint? Do we want to be, we really need to come up with what kind of feel we want to have first.
Exactly right.
And I'm gonna suggest that we concentrate on the township hall. That has a little bit more flexibility on roof, 3-story, 2-story, And some of these designs, if we come up with a roof design, keep in mind that the roofing is gonna be metal. Do we want it to be all shed roof from beginning to back? Do we want it to have a pitch, kind of a gable on the third story? Something like that, because if we give direction to Stu on our township hall, the front of, at least the front of the public safety building can kind of match that style roof, and the two will actually look like sister buildings.
So, Mike, you said that we're going to achieve this by saying, send them a thing that says, I like 1, 6, and 7, and then you just rattled off 20 really specific questions. So how are we going to get to the end by saying, I like 1, 6, and 7?
Good point.
How this is generally done is that you have ideas in your mind, but you may not have the ability as a layperson to put those ideas forward. When someone starts to talk about, Mike, about certain types of framing or, cloud, based canopies and things of that nature, I know what it is, he knows what it is. I'm not saying everybody else knows what it is, and there may be some procedural things and how material has to go together, and you can use this material here, that material there. I think if you get a general look that we can pick through a series of potential pictures like this one and/or other maybe buildings that you've seen, and as a culmination of a bunch of ideas come together, because you may like this particular design on this building, but you don't like the rest of this. You may like this, but you don't like the rest of that. I don't like the all-glass stairwells that,
Oh, no way.
I saw that. I mean, but again, I know that's just, I call that an elaborate block diagram, okay?
I agree.
And there, you go through the process and you see what is it that we as a board want the township to look like? Do we want to try to have a little bit of the culture of where we came from, which was a farming community? There's a couple cool ones on there. Go to number 3. I'm not trying to influence anybody, but there's a few things here that, have a certain look that you can do.
That's not number 3, is it?
That's not number 3.
No.
This is 3.
Well, then back
No,
up.
he
back up
he
one.
means like, he likes the modern barn one.
But that's not it. All right, it's somewhere in there. I thought it was.
It's like one of the first ones, isn't it?
Dum, 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 dum. Modern bar,
Yep.
see how that has a certain look to it, and you can have the roof, but that's, at the siding on that is a little more of a varnish type look. It's not to say that it has to be like that, but something between that one and the other one. I mean, they're little elements. Leafs gives Stu some direction to go in that direction and let his mind work at it and see what he comes up with.
The professionals hate design by committee, because you get 7 different opinions. But what they don't realize is that committees have the same trouble coming to like mind, because we all think a little differently. So I don't believe that we're gonna have 7 unanimous decisions on exactly how we want these buildings to look, but we'll morph into it if we can give them direction.
But I think to your point.
Exactly, to your point.
To your point, Mike, with the, the planning and the other committee. We'll be able to narrow it down.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, I'm glad that Nick pointed us and did the research on this, because I would have never came up with.
And I'm not a fan of the one that the supervisor just brought up. I'm more of a fan of of something like that, or even something like, anyway, bottom line is, I'll give my direction
We'll get there.
based upon that. We'll get there.
Yeah, it'll all come together. It's
Yeah.
just gonna take a little time. I mean, that's a real cool one.
That is a beautiful building, guys.
7 and
Too
8
damn
right
much
there.
glass.
Well, we've got a lot of glass.
we do.
So we
Rick, I
just have
can't
to
believe
watch
that you didn't say something like, we give him the ingredients and he bakes the cake. I would have bet a coffee that you would have said something like that.
I'm not done
so-
yet.
But that's,
It's a nice looking building, but I don't like the roof.
No.
All right,
I agree.
is there anything that you gentlemen would like to add? Okay.
I think I'm really thrilled with the potential here, guys, and if you should feel an excitement in your soul to know what we're doing here for the future of White Lake Township.
I almost think that you need to have maybe 9, 10 examples of buildings, and you lay them all out, and the board members have to go up to each one and rank them somehow. somehow,
That's
some
how we're
way.
asking them to do it,
What-
only on the email.
We have this meeting on Thursday, but I really do think we need a hearty discussion of the character of the building. What do we want to present, the feel of the building? I think we need to get that first and then pick out the elements we like of that particular style.
I'm sorry to do this to you guys, but my mind is thinking a little differently because I'm not really a good architect. I bury most of the stuff that I design. But in a building like this, we have to be a little bit careful because we're going to do a steel roof. I think we're all agree that that's the right way to do it. But think about the depth of, especially the public safety building and even our building. If you shed roof all one direction, the amount of snow and water that's going to come off of that building shedding in all one direction is going to be enormous. So I'm fighting against my engineering nature to say that we need a little bit more of a gable so we kind of break that long distance somewhere. Because if you do it a shed roof over top of the fire bays, you're going to end up with a 12-foot snowdrift on the backside of that building every time it snows, and you're not going to prevent it. So we have to be smart about those kind of things as well.
Let's think about.
I supported the gable
Story,
roof
Waterford
too.
Township's DPW building,
Yes,
closet hut style roof.
yep.
They had snow slide off that roof and actually crush a pickup truck.
Oh, my.
Parked on one of the bays. It was actually a guy I worked with every day.
One of the things was, and it's a technical thing, you'll notice that there are snow dams on steel roofs. So they have kind of a rake type device at the edge, little tabs that catch that snow and allow it to melt instead of just sheet off. But that's more technical once we give them the design.
Those are generally over pedestrian traffic areas.
Or
but-
where Meyer you pick up the carts in front of the Meyer.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Because for the first 3 years, they had carts upside down in front of it,
They
Meyer.
did.
All right, I'm going to move on to trustee comments at this time. Andrea?
Thank you. August 5th at the Fisk Farm, White Lake Parks and Rec, White Lake Historical Society, and the Lakes Area of Chamber of Commerce is having Rocking at the Farm. This is the first time this event has ever happened at the Fisk Farm. It's a continual event. They just changed locations. 2 bands, Power Play, Ava James and the Rumors are playing 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. If I remember correctly, the first band comes on at 6-ish. There definitely will have food and beverages there in a bounce house. If I remember correctly, it was $5 to get in. Would also like to thank Elaine, Dawn, and Kim for helping us get that, or helping us and supporting us by giving us the A+ from Plant to Moran. And at this time, I know we have a board meeting on Thursday. I have a prior engagement at 4:15. So when I'm done with that appointment at 4:15, I will walk in late. So that we all know ahead of time. And I'm all set.
Thank you. Liz?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So I want to congratulate the police department on a successful golf outing. My husband and I are always happy to sponsor, and we sent a couple teams in our place this year to play. And then I do want to mention that we have a new business here open Saturday. Ross Dress for Less opened on July 15th. I know everybody's anticipating that opening, so I encourage you to stop there and shop in White Lake. I want to talk a little bit about Mill Road. I'm contacted all the time about the roundabouts. We're 4 months into the roundabouts. Everybody should be well aware of it. And we're all in this boat together. And we're all residents here on the board, and we're all dealing with the construction and the roundabout as well. So we will get through it, and just hang in there. And then lastly, I would like to talk about the library. I had an incredible honor to give a ceremonial speech for my dear friend, Larry Ostrowski, who is the former director of the White Lake Township Library, who has since passed. And the Friends of the Library honored him by a wonderful tribute into the front of the library. It's just wonderful. It's a silhouette of Larry bending down with children and balloons to honor his being director from 2008 to 2018. And I'm so pleased to announce that it is White Lake Township's first piece of art work, which I hope it's one of many to come. And as we build our civic center and our park area and become neighbors there, I hope that there's much more art to be enjoyed by the community. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, it's right up front of the library. It's a wonderful tribute, and I encourage you all to stop by and take a look. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggles?
Yeah. The Township Planning Commission is going to be meeting Thursday right after our special board meeting. And we're going to be discussing Sunset Cove, Panera Bread, and Alpine Valley. I had the opportunity to golf in the Police Foundation golf outing on the 7th. A lot of faces were there. Mike, golf with Mike and Mike. Had a great time. There was a huge turnout. I think there was 260 golfers, they said. It's just a tremendous event every year. I can't believe how many people participate, and it's a great time.
Big. Yeah.
So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Powell?
I want to thank this board for a great meeting tonight. I want to thank our residents very much for caring about this township, and the more input we get from the public, the better off we are. So that being said, I look forward to a safe rest of the summer. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Noble?
Just like to thank the everybody that's working, all of us, towards the Township Civic Center and Township Hall. Sean's taken on again, tremendous lot of responsibility. I think he's got a phone glued to his ear from 8 o'clock till 4, nonstop dealing with his other duties. So appreciate that and everybody that's involved. Like, again, to thank Elaine and Don for a great audit and being, watchdogs as far as looking over every bill that comes through, not only with the audit, questioning certain billing that has come through, but just overall, they do an incredible job. Don's taken over on extra responsibilities, saving us money with new copiers that the township has leased, and there's a program with Toner, and she's taken that on, has done an incredible job with it, in saving money and thinking outside the box. And then last, thank Chief Keller, Sean Keidel, and all that were involved in the golf outing. What Trustee Ruggles isn't telling you, that he golfed with Darren McCarty, and he was out driving Mr. McCarty. And both have farming backgrounds, and I kept hearing about the farmer's finesse. So it was a great outing, and look forward to it next year. Is that true, Mr. Lufkin?
That is true. Farm boy finesse, I think it was.
Farm boy finesse.
Farm boy finesse, yeah.
So it was great, see everybody having a good time. That's it.
Mr. Roman?
What you didn't mention is Darren McCarty also grew up on a tomato farm. So him and Scott had some farming things in common. And he's a great golfer, by the way. Want to thank you, residents, for attending tonight. We appreciate it. I want to thank Sean O'Neill for going above and beyond all the time he spent on these contracts. So super job, Sean. And I want to thank Aaron Potter for all the work and time he's put in on the sewer lining project. You went above and beyond, so thank you.
Yes.
And that's all I had.
Very good. A little bit of information. We received some statistics from the FBI, and we are in the top ratings for the safest cities in Oakland County, in the state, in the country. We ranked number 15.
Wow.
Okay? You have a chance of 1 in 233 to be involved in some kind of a crime. Okay? Which is a very good number. We had 2 sister communities in Michigan that ranked very high also. I can't remember their placement, but one of them was Commerce.
And West Bloomfield.
And the other one was Rochester.
And West Bloomfield was 22nd.
They were 22nd, okay. So there were a few communities in Michigan that made very high marks, and it was like the top 100. It's really a great thing to know that this community is watched over, but I firmly believe it is 100% directly attributed to the community policing programs that we have. the Youth Academy, the Citizens Academy, the cadet program, you know, the different things that we have going on and have available. The golf outing that funds you know, our foundation. And it's just essential. And we have one more event that'll, we're going to have, and tickets are available if you go to Skull Island. There's an event on the 27th that the White Lake Police Foundation is a beneficiary thereof. Tickets are available. If you get online, take a look, see what's there. So with that, I say thank you for everyone for being here tonight in the crowd and on the tube. And it's nice to see the regulars here and a few new faces or faces we haven't seen very often. And I say to my board members, thank you all for your dedication to the Civic Center project and where it's going to go. We are going to leave an indelible mark in our community for the future. So with that, I will make a motion to adjourn. Looking for support?
Support.
Motion, support. This meeting is adjourned. Good night. God bless.
Do we have to vote?